Chase found a cool spot under the table, rested his head on my foot, and watched the cars go by in the square. We were sitting at a table outside on a pleasant late March afternoon. The sun felt nice, but it wasn't too hot. We were both just enjoying the scene of cars stopping at a four-way intersection nearby like older folks do. Chase is my best friend, a 2-year-old Weimaraner I raised from a puppy, and he's one of the best companions a guy could ask for. He's big and strong, and he has a lot of energy. We've had our share of fun adventures. Instead of traffic lights, this small town in Texas had a four-way stop where 2 big highways and a busy road met. Every hunting season since I started visiting, I am always impressed by how well everyone follows the rules here. Truckers, teenagers in pickups, fancy car drivers who usually can't stand traffic back home, and little old ladies in their SUVs all took turns respectfully at the intersection. I couldn't help but wonder if this way of doing things could work back in Plano, where traffic lights seem to have a mind of their own, even when there's no one around. Maybe everyone was just being polite because they were in such a nice little town, where manners seem to come naturally, unlike in the big city where people can be more impatient. I remembered earlier when a rancher moved over to let me pass while I was driving. That kind of kindness inspired me to do the same when a driver in a flashy SUV started to come up behind me in a no-passing section. It could be the charming atmosphere, but I think it was more about the beautiful hills and lakes that made you realize you were in a different place. The road I drove on twisted and turned, lined with granite rocks from a long-ago volcanic activity. As I crossed the Colorado River and Inks Lake, I noticed how the river carved its way through the rocks. Chase and I were heading to my motorhome setup on our hunting land, but we stopped at a cafe on the square for one of their giant burgers and some chicken strips for Chase. I know some people say dogs shouldn't eat human food, but Chase has healthy dog food every day. A little treat won't hurt him, and it might even slow him down enough for me to keep up during our runs. Not that it would really help. A young waitress brought out our food and my drink. She looked quite young, but she was probably in high school and working at her first job since she had to be 18 to serve beer in Texas. When she placed our plates on the table, she smiled shyly and asked, "Can I pet your dog?" "He would really like that," I said to her, nudging my chair a bit closer so she could reach him better. Chase lifted his head, glanced at me for approval, and then sat up so she could pet him and say kind things, just like people do. Well, almost everyone. I almost let a negative thought creep in, but I quickly pushed it aside. That part of my life was behind me. Chase and I were moving on. We had left everything behind. Rita was supposed to come back tomorrow from her 2-week trip to Oklahoma City, where she claimed she was taking care of Mom, even though she had postponed her return twice because her sister was not available to help. Sure, Rita. I knew the truth. There were 3 untrustworthy women, and I had the proof to back it up. It didn't seem like she would care that I was gone. After all, she had been unfaithful during her stay in Oklahoma City and would likely be fine for weeks without me. What might catch her attention was the legal papers that would be delivered when she returned to Plano. You would think that freeing her to live her life would be good for both of us, but I guessed she would argue that her actions didn't matter and that I should overlook her mistakes. I quickly stopped myself from spiraling into negativity. "Okay, don't dwell on the past. You came here to start fresh, so keep your focus." What would this new life be like? My previous life involved long work days building a business while others took care of the house and yard. Rita would always be spending my money, wanting bigger cars or nicer homes. "Stay positive, Danny. Look around. What do you see? What do you want to do now? Do any of these buildings interest you, or do you want to take some time to relax before diving back into work?" What do I see? I looked at the wide sidewalks lined with stores and offices along Main Street, all covered by old roof structures, with tin ceilings that dated back many years. The buildings were made from sandy red sandstone that was once quarried nearby. Some of the stones were even taken from an old fort that was built over 100 years ago. The creek that used to run through town was mostly dry now, but the tall pecan trees remained, once attracting Native American tribes. A community effort to restore the town square had removed unattractive modern facades from the old buildings and brought back their original looks, painting over bright modern colors with more historical subdued shades that were made up of natural materials. The only bright colors in sight were posters for the high school's extracurricular activities and sports teams, each store showcasing several, along with schedules and event calendars. The whole square was impressive, but two things stood out. One was the bright neon sign at the old movie theater, still showing films after all these years, with tickets costing $4 and popcorn just $1. Every fall during deer season and every spring during turkey season, my friends and I made sure to go to a movie, or sometimes one of the concerts, as long as we bought tickets early before they sold out. The other notable sight in the downtown area was the charming courthouse made of sandstone and limestone, sitting in the center of the square. It was actually a rectangle, as it stretched 2 blocks long and 1 block wide, but the locals always called it the square. This 3-story building had a tall bell tower on top and was surrounded by tall pecan trees with a large grassy area around it. A low, natural rock fence marked its boundaries. The courthouse was very impressive, standing tall like a guardian of law beside the intersection of 2 roads. My truck and trailer were parked on the west side of the square, next to the rock fence made for trucks with trailers, so they wouldn't block the view of the beautiful building that attracted photographers and onlookers every day. I wasn't there to cause any trouble. I wanted to blend in, and Chase and I were doing just fine until a group of laughing young women came out of the wine bar to my left and started walking up the sidewalk toward the shops further west. Their laughter caught Chase's attention, so he lifted his head from my boot, perked up his ears, and showed off his best pose. The first young woman to reach us was a petite brunette who quickly approached our table. Without waiting, she squatted down in her short skirt to talk to Chase in a sweet voice. At first, he looked at her with a proud expression, but he warmed up to her and gave her a quick lick on her lips, which were now very close to his. She was definitely an animal lover because she simply laughed, offered him her cheek, and kept petting him, saying what a good boy he was. The others gathered around, watching and laughing, and some even leaned down to pet him too. I was focused on the pretty brunette until one of the others, a tall blonde with long legs, leaned over next to me. She gently patted Chase's nose and then looked into my eyes. Her lightly freckled cheeks and sparkling green eyes made me pause for a moment. Then she appeared puzzled and said, "Danny, is that you?" I leaned back to see her better, and as she stood up straight, I asked, "Gina, what are you doing here?" She looked just as surprised as I felt, but quickly cheered up and said, "I'm on a spring break trip with some friends to wine country. What are you doing here? Don't you live north of Dallas?" Her question struck me hard, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe I didn't do a great job of it, as I noticed the sympathetic looks from Gina, the brunette with Chase, and the other 4 young women around us. Gina, who I thought was now a married teacher in College Station, looked at me with concern. "Yeah, about that," I started, but the brunette put her hand on my leg, squeezed it gently, and said, "Don't worry. Gina didn't mean to pry, and the rest of us don't know you, but we can see how you're feeling. I'm Danielle, and Chase and I are already friends. You're okay with that, right?" I replied. "I can't imagine him finding a nicer friend like you, but I should let you know he can be a bit picky." Chase took off at the first smell, and that's how he got his name. "Oh no," she said, looking upset. "I just got rid of one of those. Chase, you need to behave." He noticed her change in tone and felt worried and confused. The other women chuckled at his sad face, and she crouched down to apologize, giving me a better look at her bright red outfit. She was really cute, and her strong legs looked like they could take on anything. Gina giggled at my gaze and said, "Come on, everyone, you're all so eager. Now, Mr. Poonhound, will you be kind and invite us to sit with you? Maybe buy us one of those huge burgers so we can enjoy the fresh air together? We brought our own drinks." I waved toward the 2 open tables next to mine and said, "Would you lovely ladies like to join us at our tables on this sunny afternoon? I'd love to buy you burgers and fries while we enjoy the fresh air, only a bit spoiled by the road noise." Gina, not Gina, set her bags down and took a seat to my right, looking toward the road. The cute girl stood up, frowned, and moved a chair across from me to sit on my left, where she could pet Chase and draw my attention with her lovely legs. I didn't even know her last name, but I found myself really wanting to get to know her better. I had known Gina since 5th grade, and she was always fun. She was younger, but quickly went from the skinny little sister to a popular high school student, and then a stunning college freshman who impressed everyone around her. I often dreamed about her, but life always got in the way of those dreams. Gina playfully slapped my shoulder and asked, "So, old friend, what have you been up to for the last 8 years?" "Just working and getting older while you've been getting more impressive." "What's your secret?" I replied. "You're still full of it. And if you think I look younger than when you last saw me at 19, you must need glasses." She laughed and rolled her eyes. I glanced at her friends, and she said, "I'll tell you more later, but this is Dana's high school boyfriend if you've ever heard of him, especially when Dana has been having a good time." "That's not quite the whole story," I chimed in. "Ladies, I'm not sure what you've heard, but if Dana said it, it's best to approach it with caution. I promise I'm not what you think." A beautiful woman at the last table looked up from her drink, paused, and said, "So you're not the perfect guy who got away? How do you plan to fix that, Danny?" "Well, Dana does tell some truth," I replied, easing back. "But I find it hard to believe everything she claims." "Are you sure I'm the right person, or am I the one she left because I upset her a lot?" "Both, actually," she replied. "I'm Rebecca, Dana's best friend." "Oops, please tell her I said hello and that I hope she and Harry are very happy." Everyone at the table laughed at that. I wasn't sure why, so I waited quietly. "Hey." The redhead with a big smile said, "I don't think either of them would say they are very happy about their relationship, but the one in charge seems happier than the other." I winced. Ouch. I can guess how that turned out. From what I've seen, if you're going to marry someone who is hard to please, make sure you handle things carefully. Someone at another table whispered, "Harry learned that lesson too late," and others quietly agreed. I turned and spotted my waitress, waving her over. She took my order and quickly headed outside with some menus. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you ladies come in. Can I take your drink orders?" The women wanted wine, I asked for a cold beer, and Chase wanted water with lime. Well, really without lime, but that made the waitress smile, and the ladies chuckled, probably thinking it was cute. An attractive woman with light brown hair leaned forward, slapped the table, and said, "All right, if Gina won't do it, I'll introduce everyone. I'm Amy, the plain one. The lucky one with the impressive figure is Trisha. The one with blue-streaked black hair is Wanda. Danielle and Rebecca already said their names. We all work for A&M Consolidated ISD and are using our spring break to shop, drink wine, and maybe meet some interesting guys unless our boldness scares them away." I looked at each woman, starting with Rebecca and ending with the cute one sitting next to me. I nodded thoughtfully and said, "I can see why you might have a hard time. The guys around here don't get to meet a mix of smart, fun, and attractive women like you very often. You six would definitely turn heads at Bent Tree Country Club, especially if you walked in wearing cute tennis outfits like their wives do." "Oh, I understand," Amy added. "You, Dana, and Gina were all tennis players back home. That's why you looked at her when you said that." "Maybe, but I would be happy to buy the tennis dresses at the shop down the street if all of you wear them to the Spring Fling dance tonight." "Spring Fling dance?" Wanda asked, smiling widely. "Is that really happening?" "There's a poster right behind you. It features a local band from 6 to 8:30 and another band from Angelo from 9 until midnight. There will be open space in the park under the pecan trees, with beer stands and booths for local wineries, craft beer, and the local distillery. The Spring Fling is new, but it's already a big deal here in Chance, Texas." Everyone exchanged glances, and then Rebecca said, "That sounds fun, but we don't have places to stay. The bed and breakfasts were all booked when we checked online, and we definitely can't drive to a hotel after drinking wine all day." Without thinking much, I suggested, "The landowners where we hunt have a couple of nice cabins near their house, which overlooks the Llano River." I pulled out my phone, found a few pictures, and showed them to Gina. "These are the cabins. They don't usually rent them out, but they might this time since they know me well. If you think you're interested, I'll call Kay." Knowing they wanted to discuss the plans privately, I said, "I'm going inside to use the restroom and grab another drink. Do you want anything?" They declined, so I told Chase to stay with the girls and walked through the cafe to the bar at the back. I recognized the bartender and the staff from the feed store gathered around a table. After chatting for a bit, I returned about 10 minutes later. I asked, "So what did you decide?" Everyone smiled, and Rebecca said, "If you can find us a place to stay, we'll go to the dance with you, but not in tennis skirts. Wouldn't boots and jeans be better?" It seemed like she was leading the group, which worried me since she was hard to read and clearly very smart. Of course, Gina was smart too, and they were all teachers. I replied, "Boots and jeans are always good, but these aren't country and western bands. Actually, both bands write most of their own songs, mixing folk, blues, and some country rock with heartfelt ballads. This little historic town, with its granite hills and river, draws all sorts of creative people, including some well-known painters and musicians. There's even a recording studio in the artist colony by the river southeast of town. If you look around the square, you'll see a couple of sculptures by a famous artist who has a gallery in Santa Fe. So don't think everyone here is a rancher or farmer. There are fewer full-time farmers now, and more land has changed to vineyards. This county isn't like Gillespie yet, with its wine country highway to Stonewall, but there are 12 wineries and many vineyards here. And it's hard to believe here in Texas, but there are 9 wine bars around the square, a craft brewery, a distillery, and cafes with bars. Plus, the wineries make award-winning wines that attract people looking to discover these fantastic Western Hill Country wines, which is quite different from the cattle town that Gina and I come from. "How often do you come down here to hunt?" Gina asked. "You sound like you know this place well." "This has been my getaway from the city for the past 5 years," I replied. "I hired someone local who had family land for responsible hunters. We came down to meet them. They thought Bode would keep us in check, so we agreed on a price and moved a trailer and my RV here. At first, our wives loved joining us, but I guess that faded, since I ended up spending a lot of time here alone last year. Even my hunting friends rarely came." "Aren't you too busy with work and family to spend that much time here?" Rebecca asked. "My business doesn't need me as much anymore, just for approving checks and some contracts. My wife spends a week or 2 each month caring for her mother in Oklahoma City." "But her mother is doing fine, right?" Danielle asked, leaning in with concern. "Yes, her mother is well, so are her daughters. My wife and her sister will face some challenges when they return home. My friend and former brother-in-law will be down here soon. After I sent him the proof of his situation, he said he needed to leave town quickly, or his kids might end up in a tough spot." "What about your kids?" she asked. "I don't have any, and I'm not going to jail because my wife was unfaithful. This is one of those moments where you learn the hard way, teach her and others a lesson, and chalk it up as experience. I may not seem like much now, but I'm still young and have some money. When I find a woman I might want to spend my life with, I will ask the questions I assumed were clear before. I want to know about her views on loyalty and if she is okay with a fair agreement that applies to both of us. I will also ask if she wants a family, how soon, and how many kids she wants. Does she want to feel at home in my 4-bedroom house, or will she want to move to bigger places every time we earn a little more?" "So you're saying you married a beautiful person who wasn't interested in kids, and who didn't stay faithful, and you didn't know any of this before you married her?" Amy asked. "Exactly," I replied. "You always fell for lovely looks, my friend," Gina joked warmly. I hung my head in shame and nodded. "True. You'd think Dana would have taught me better, wouldn't you?" That made everyone laugh, and Rebecca said, "Well, make your call so we can eat our burgers and onion rings and decide if we're staying or going to Fredericksburg." I looked at her, but she just smiled and raised her eyebrows. Keeping an eye on Rebecca would not be a hard task. If things went wrong, I could always put them all in the 2-bedroom trailer I had, but I suspected these 6 classy ladies would prefer the nicer guest cabins. Kay and Charlie built those cabins and a pool for their 2 sons to bring their families to visit, and the cabins were almost luxurious, just right for their daughters-in-law. I had a long talk with Charlie and Kay about my situation, and they knew I was coming here to think and plan. So they were surprised when I asked if they would rent the cabins to my 6 friends. Kay spoke up first. "I want to know a lot more than that, but I suspect they are nearby, so tell them yes. I'll put fresh sheets on the beds, but they'll have to make them. And this is not a bed and breakfast that serves breakfast. If they want food, they should bring it and fill the fridge." Thanks a lot, Kay. I really appreciate it. But I doubt they will bring much food. They plan to shop in Chance today and go to the Spring Fling dance tonight. I paid for the meal and sent Gina a message with a location pin so they could find my RV. I wanted to show them our camp and then take them to the main house and cabins. I thought they might roll their eyes at our camp, but would hopefully accept it. Gina might do so too, as the others seemed to have a grounded view. After all, they were teachers, not socialites. But you never know who might be a snob. Danielle wanted Chase to stay and shop with them, even offering him the other half of her huge hamburger. But he was with me, so he kindly said no. He did want to ride in the back of the pickup since we were headed to the ranch. The girls got to see a different side of him when he loaded up and started moving around looking for something. We waved goodbye, and they headed up to the By Chance boutique while we drove south with Chase's ears flapping in the wind. By the time I finished unloading the pickup and parked the trailer, I really needed a beer. It had been a while since I had moved, and I had collected quite a bit of stuff. I wasn't sure why I felt I needed to bring everything. Maybe I was worried that my ex would throw out anything I left behind. She was the one who had made mistakes, yet somehow I ended up feeling responsible. The ladies must have had a long shopping day because by the time they arrived, I had already moved everything, showered, changed, and was on my second beer. I gave Danielle, Gina, Rebecca, and Tricia a quick tour of the trailer and my motorhome. Danielle, Gina, and Rebecca didn't seem bothered by the idea of staying in the trailer, but Tricia looked a little unsure, while Amy seemed hesitant. They all liked my motorhome, especially the spacious bedroom with a big closet and king-size bed. The bathroom, with its nice shower and sink, got good reviews too. Feeling encouraged by their positive reactions, I took them to meet my landlords and friends, Kay and Charlie. After everyone introduced themselves, Kay took the ladies to see the cabins while Charlie and I chatted. He jokingly asked how I managed to bring 6 women with me. I explained, and he laughed, telling me to buy a lottery ticket because I seemed lucky that day. He then asked if I was interested in any of them. I told him I'd be happy to be with any of them if they wanted to be with me. Just then, Kay had questions about how I arrived with 6 women. Luckily, the ladies answered her questions. Kay then commented on how nice they were and mentioned that they were all going to a dance together. Charlie, who used to enjoy parties but settled down once he started dating Kay, looked excited at the prospect of going out and dancing as well. The 6 ladies were heading to the dance in Rebecca's fancy Jeep, planning to have a great time. I made sure to keep my drinking in check since I needed to drive them to the dance and back safely. I learned early on to stay in control, especially when managing a group of friends who wanted to have fun. Tonight, it was up to me to look after these lovely women, and I also needed to keep an eye on Kay and Charlie. Tonight is the night I finally use my koozie to keep my beer cool while I take care of my friends. They may not be in tennis skirts, but they're definitely dressed to impress. Kay, in particular, surprised me. I had no idea she looked so good under her loose jeans and baggy shirts. Charlie was beaming with pride as he helped her into their nice pickup. I understood why when she turned around with a smile that brightened my night. Even in her mid-50s, she looked fantastic. Rebecca tossed me the keys and got in the passenger side, holding a red cup filled with wine. I opened doors and helped the others get in, enjoying the view of my lovely companions. "Nice Jeep," I joked as I climbed in. Then I looked at Rebecca and couldn't believe how stunning she looked. She had the kind of beauty you see in movies, with a slim figure and long legs. It caught my attention when she climbed in, and she noticed my reaction. She smiled and winked at me. It's a pleasant 14-minute drive from the ranch to the park, which is located on the south side of town where our road meets the main highway. I enjoyed the cheerful conversation from the back seat, which reminded me of when my friends and I used to drive to events together. It felt like a sense of connection I had been missing for a while. I wondered if everyone else knew something that I didn't, which might explain why our group had changed. If that was the case, I needed to find new friends. I was the only one on the lease right now, at least until my former brother-in-law, Bill, arrived. Thankfully, I had good phone service, so I could reach out to my friends if needed. Lyndon would likely be the easiest to talk to since I had some information on him and he was worried about his wife. I made a note to talk to him next week while he's at work. Bill might have some insights, but he didn't seem aware of what was going on. As we drove, the conversation turned to questions about the Spring Fling event coming up. Yes, there will be beer, wine, and some tasty food options, I replied to Wanda. The spring fling is meant to bring in locals and visitors to enjoy themselves and spend a bit of money. I went on to explain how the park would be bustling with local artists and vendors showcasing their work. It's the second annual Spring Fling, and while I don't know exactly how it will go, I've seen the excitement during past celebrations, especially around Independence Day. They chatted enthusiastically about the park and community golf course, built years ago by the locals, eagerly anticipating the crowd that was already starting to gather. The band was practicing as we walked from our parking spot under a big tree. They tried to argue when I paid for all our tickets, including Kay and Charlie, but I reminded them that I invited them, so I covered the cost. We entered the area as a group, guided by Kay and Charlie, who led us to a large wooden picnic table. The girls checked for splinters that could snag their clothes, but it was recently sanded and looked good. Gina and Danielle showed them how to sit on the bench gracefully in their pretty dresses, which took some careful movements. Once everyone was seated, I took drink orders and headed for the booths with Gina and Danielle to help carry. I'm not familiar with wine, but I noticed it didn't seem like familiar brands like Lone Star or Coors. The names were more French. My friends seemed to know what they were doing, but switched to beer when they saw my cold bottle. Been a while since I had a cold beer with you, Kirk. Can you still drink a lot and be okay to drive? Gina asked. More than that, but I keep track, I replied. I know what I can have and stay safe, especially tonight. She smirked at my mention of precious cargo and playfully nudged my shoulder. You can be charming when you're not being a nuisance. I don't understand why we couldn't bring Chase, Danielle spoke up. There's plenty of room, and I see other dogs here. I explained, that's the point, other dogs. Chase behaves as long as others do, but if a male dog gets close, he can get aggressive, and at his size, it's hard to control him. Sounds a bit like someone I know, Gina joked. Oh, right. That's you. Is that why you have a male dog? Similar temperaments? Maybe. But I'm more relaxed now than I was back then. Sure, she laughed. Then she said, so if some guy comes over and bothers Danny, you're just going to sit there? Looking at Danny's playful smile, I replied, well, for a moment, yes. I'd want to see how things go, but I'd step in before it goes too far, unless she seemed okay with it. Danny playfully hit my arm, laughing. I see what you're thinking. I can guess you'd be the one being bold, huh? Gina giggled. And then later you'd try to make her feel good again. Danny looked between us, curious. Sounds like you have stories. When did you two... We haven't, I interrupted quickly. Not that I haven't thought about it, but we haven't. He's right. We haven't, even though I've thought about it for a long time. But I've seen him in action once. I don't remember that, I replied. Austin Marriott downtown. My sister, the suite we shared, she said. Oh, I thought your boyfriend was keeping you busy, I realized. No. For the first 10 minutes, I listened to you over his snores until I decided to watch. I leaned in close and asked her quietly, so how many times did you enjoy it, watching from the shadows? Not as many as Dana did, Gina replied with a playful smile. Charlie then shifted the conversation back to the table, asking where everyone was from, where they lived, and what they did for work. All were teachers, coaches, or helpers at A&M Consolidated, but came from very different backgrounds. Gina grew up in Cowtown, played basketball at a junior college, then moved to Texas to graduate. She was younger than me by 2 years, and I had already graduated by the time she got to UT. Danielle hailed from LaGrange and was quite accomplished, graduating with honors from Texas Tech and being a cheerleader. Wanda came from Tampa, Florida, but went to college at SMU, thanks to her wealthy family. Amy was a local from San Antonio who attended UTSA before marrying, moving to College Station, and later divorcing her unfaithful husband, who was a professor at TAMU. Trisha was from McAllen in the Rio Grande Valley. She lived at home while going to college at UT Rio Grande Valley and was still single despite having many admirers, as the others noted. There was something about Rebecca that caught my attention, and learning about her background only made me more curious. She was raised in Highland Park, Dallas, attended a prestigious school through 4th grade, and then moved to Highland Park for middle school. A tennis star and an award-winning actress, she graduated in the top 3% of her class. Despite coming from wealth and having high expectations, she graduated with honors from Tulane and chose to become a teacher, which was rare. With the band set to start in 5 minutes, I took drink and food orders and headed out again, this time with Amy and Trisha. On our way back, I noticed a table of young men without dates. I recognized one of them, as he had done some work for us, so I stopped by and asked, "Are you 4 gentlemen like Luke here?" They looked puzzled until I pointed to another table. "See that group of wonderful women? I hope to find a few gentlemen who can keep them dancing all night. They are visiting teachers from College Station, and I'm sure you want them to leave with a good impression of our town. So, if you're up for it, follow me and introduce yourselves." They jumped up from their picnic table as if startled. While my group of ladies was around the ages of 25, 28, the young men were in their early 20s. I was the oldest at the table, though I hadn't hit the big milestone of 30 yet. Charlie and Kay knew all 5 young men and insisted they join us. We squeezed closer together, making it work since there wasn't much room. The band started playing an exciting mix of music, with about 80% suitable for dancing if you were willing to try. All 14 of us were eager to join in. Others came by to chat with Kay or Charlie, and some asked the lovely ladies to dance. I danced with all 6 of them, just as I told Charlie. Anyone willing to dance with me could. I also danced with Kay a couple of times, and she was great on the dance floor. The only issue was her ability to get close to me during a slow song, which made me feel a bit awkward. Then she winked and said she was happy that a younger man still found her appealing at her age. I quietly told her that 55 was young and that she was attractive at any age, especially since other men seemed to notice her too. This gave me a nice moment where she was close to me before she pulled away with a laugh and thanked me for the dance. Gina kept a little distance during our first slow dance, but after watching others, she relaxed more for the rest of the dances. Being that close to her made me think about wanting to spend time with her, but she was just one of 3 women I would like to enjoy a weekend with. I mean, if Amy, Trisha, or Wanda showed interest, I would be happy to spend time with them, but those other 3 were special to me. Having been single for a while and feeling upset with my ex, I needed to keep my thoughts in check. I didn't want to chase after every woman I saw, but right now, I found myself thinking about them a lot more often. The local band finished their set to loud cheers, and we took a break while they changed things up for the next part. Amy, Wanda, and Trisha were having fun with some younger guys. Gina, Rebecca, and Danielle were enjoying themselves too, but keeping things friendly with me in between dances. However, on the dance floor, things felt different, and with all the dancing, I knew I would be feeling restless by the end of the night. Dancing with different partners brought Charlie's lively side out, and he kept everyone amused during the breaks with funny stories and jokes. I hadn't seen that side of him before, and it was great. His wife seemed slightly amused, but was enjoying herself too. Once other guys saw she was ready to dance, she hardly got to sit down while the music played. As for the ladies, I didn't need to worry about them being taken care of. They were too busy dancing to drink much. We ended up being some of the last to leave, and as soon as we got into the SUV, I was gently scolded for not mentioning the next day's plans. Rebecca said, "We've already talked to Kay. We're staying until Sunday, and you and Charlie are taking us to town at 10 in the morning. There will be vendors from all over Central and West Texas, and Kay says the handmade items and local wines are amazing. You made it sound like a small event, but it's a big deal," I replied. "I'm not from here either, so I only know what I saw on that poster outside. You're quite the demanding group, but I wasn't trying to push you away. Don't you usually make a trip to Fredericksburg?" "Pains, right?" someone said from the back seat, and I felt a playful tug on my hair before I swerved a little to remind them I was driving. We came to the hill country to shop, taste wine, and hopefully meet some guys and dance. We've danced with the guys already, so now it's time for the wine and shopping. We hope to rent a U-Haul tomorrow to bring everything home. You should book it online before 2 when they close, I said. Or, if they have a sidewalk sale, you could do both things at once. Kay wanted us all to come inside to relax and chat. We gathered around the big dining table with some local wine Kay wanted everyone to try, and she sent the guys into the living room. Instead of turning on the TV as Kay thought we would, we sat closely together on the couch, out of their sight, for a private conversation. Charlie suggested we tease Kay a bit, but we were really talking about the women in the other room and others we saw at the dance. We wondered if Wanda, Trisha, and Amy would go out with Will, Jean, and Jeremy again. He asked me about the other girls, and I replied that I'd be happy if any of them liked me back. He agreed. You can't go wrong with any of them, but I think the wealthy girl might be more demanding. Still, she's a teacher, so she can't be too snobby. That's true for all of them. I'm just glad they weren't my teachers. It would have been hard to concentrate in class. What if you had to see each of them every period, Charlie? I joked. Then I'd be hiding in the restroom every period, he laughed. And we both knew that was probably true. Of course, our laughing caught Kay's attention, so she came in, hands on her hips. What are you two whispering and laughing about? She asked. The others were behind her, trying to support her, but grinning like they found it funny too. Charlie held his hands up, looking mischievous, so I explained. Well, we started by rating all the ladies we saw tonight on a scale of 1 to 10, just focusing on looks. Before you came in, we talked about how tough it would be to have one of you as our teacher and Kay as our principal, and how we might handle the pressure. What were you all giggling about? Danielle asked innocently. How would you relieve the stress? But Gina gently placed her hand on Danielle's shoulder, signaling her not to ask me to explain. Well, Charlie began, but Kay laughed and warned him to keep quiet, and soon everyone was laughing. Charlie's huge grin made Kay jump in his lap and quietly shush him. I looked at Danielle and offered, I'll tell you how if you sit in my lap like Kay is on Charlie's. She started to come over, but Rebecca held her back and whispered, Remember our agreement, just loud enough for me to hear. So you have an agreement about not sitting on my lap? I asked. You, Mr. Kirk, are a married man, and we don't sit on the laps of married men, she replied. And if I weren't married? Things might be different, she said with a smile. So, after tomorrow? I'm still married, I replied. Maybe, but she hasn't respected our marriage, and I feel free of that now. My brother-in-law is coming tomorrow, and we're probably going to have a fun night together. We might even look at the photos and videos my private investigator took of the sisters and some guys if any of you want to join. Kay reached over and gave me a gentle pat, while Rebecca stepped back. I'm sorry, Danny. I did not mean to upset you. I was just making the point that none of us are trying to break up homes. Although the fact that you have video proof your home is already broken might change things a bit, we will have to talk about that. Obviously, I do not know your wife, but I do know the girls in this group. None of us, not a single one, ended their marriage or serious relationship like that. I do not know you very well either, but from what I have seen so far, she would have to be crazy to treat you that way, unless I am the worst partner in the world, right? Or maybe I secretly hurt her. You are wondering, are you not? I kept a firm tone, but I was not fooling Gina. She was smiling while the others shook their heads. Thoughts like that come to mind when you hear something like that, yes. But even being around you a little while, my mind quickly pushed those ideas away, Rebecca said. She tried to calm me. Having teased her enough, I innocently said, well, you could prove that first idea by spending the night in my trailer and then sharing your thoughts with the others. Or all 6 of you could check for yourselves, although you would have to stay a few days for me to do it right. Gina started laughing. Rebecca stepped forward to tap me on the shoulder for teasing her. But I caught her hand and pulled her close in a friendly way. She struggled a bit, but I was too strong, so she was soon held tight against me while she wiggled and half tried to get loose while giggling. The movement was fun. Finally, she stopped struggling and sat still. Turn me loose, you big silly, she demanded with a laugh. I let her go. She sat there a moment longer. Then she hopped up as if upset, but the look she gave me was not upset at all. Gina saw and laughed. My, Rebecca, what happened while you were playing with him? She should have had a quick answer, but the sudden blush gave her away before she could reply. It invited the others to join in the teasing. She huffed away, but no one believed it. The laughter continued until she left the main house with a backward good night. I knew she would be asked many questions before she got to sleep. While they were watching Rebecca leave, I sneaked up behind Gina and did what we used to do to tease her as a girl. I tickled her. I got a good start before she screamed and pulled away. I went after her. She fought well, but when the others realized how ticklish she was, they joined me. It was hard to keep your hands in place when she moved around so much. With several girls screaming and trying to tickle each other, Danielle joined Gina in trying to tickle me. Their problem was trying to tickle someone who is not ticklish while being very ticklish themselves. Things calmed down over time. Goodbye hugs were given, and we all went home for the night. On the short drive back to my trailer, I smiled. The evening had been full of fun and laughter with the girls. I had some strange dreams and had to deal with them again before getting out of bed. It didn't help that the weather was going to be hot today, reaching 88 degrees. The others were dressed for the sun, wearing sandals, light outfits, or shorts. O. Henry sighed, knowing he was in for a long day with no relief in sight. Tricia and Wanda wore tops that didn't quite fit and had to keep adjusting them as they moved around. Amy, who was usually seen as plain, looked great in her white outfit, showing off the results of her dedication to fitness. Danielle wore short black shorts and a fancy top just above them, looking cute and stylish. Then I saw Gina. She had toned legs and a strong figure, dressed in a navy outfit with a zipper that caught my attention. I was curious about what lay beneath. Her confident smile suggested she knew exactly how she looked. Normally, her hair was styled simply, but today those curls sent a different message, one that said she was ready to stand out. Rebecca caught my eye, too. She was stunning with her long curls and bright yellow dress that accentuated her form. While her curves were modest, they were just right, and her face was truly captivating. I felt a rush of regret for not being more prepared for this encounter. "Thanks for driving down. We're taking my car because we know you might try to sneak off with your truck," she said, as she tossed the keys to O. Henry and opened the passenger door. I caught the keys and hurried over to see her get in. She took her time, and I couldn't help but watch as she settled into her seat, smiling all the while. As I looked back, I noticed the others were all smiling at me. They climbed into the car, displaying their outfits as they went to their seats. Gina was right by me, and after I had admired the others, she stepped into the car, adjusting her outfit as she found her spot. It was quite the sight. She wasn't wearing a bra, and I noticed her very clearly, which made me pause for a moment. I stared until laughter snapped me back to reality. I wasn't really embarrassed. After all, what guy wouldn't look? But my face might have been a bit red. The laughter grew louder. "I told you," Gina announced. "He's an easy target." From the back, Danielle chimed in. "Are we really supposed to think you kept your cool while your wife was being playful?" "Believe what you want," I said, trying to defend myself. "But just because I can appreciate beautiful women does not mean I'm interested in anything more. I'm happily married and have standards even if my eyes wander." "Blame it on your old friend," Rebecca said, giving my leg a playful pat. "For some reason, she enjoys teasing you and got us involved. Not that it took much persuading since, as she says, you're an easy mark." "Do you know what happens to pranksters out here?" I asked, trying to sidestep their teasing. Rebecca laughed as I leaned in closer. "Oh, just as I guessed, you're not going without anything." Rebecca looked at me with a smile and playfully lifted her dress a bit. I couldn't help but reach out, and she responded in a teasing way. She held something up and her friends gasped. I reached out with my hands open and she dropped it, laughing. "Very funny. That will get us noticed when we park in downtown Chance during the Arts and Crafts Fair." "I won't be part of that," Wanda joked. "One look at me and they'll know I'm not fitting into that tiny thing." Gina zipped up her romper before getting out of the car, and Rebecca tried to grab something back. I shook my head. "Oh no, I warned you about teasing me. Be careful when you sit down." She made a funny face and stuck out her tongue, which made her look even cuter. As scary as she could be, I found myself warming up to her. They looked like charming troublemakers as Ken and I watched them from a distance until it was time for us to go eat. The arts and crafts, clothing, and snacks were all around the square and side streets. The food booths clustered near the historic courthouse. A bandstand was set up, and people were getting ready with lawn chairs while they picked up their meals. Ken and I packed up the bags, grabbed some chairs, and set them up while the ladies got their food and compliments. Luckily, we brought extra chairs because they also brought extra friends. Ken and I set up our chairs and made sure they would be empty when we got back. Kay just smiled and said, "We'll see who sits there." "There are some really nice-looking people around today." Ken looked over the lawn and said, "And some nice ladies, too." Kay laughed and told us they would still be here when we came back. Ken and I were hungry from watching all the shopping, so we tried one of everything from the meat stalls, topped off with a wide variety of homemade desserts. Each sale supported a good cause, and we had a cooler for leftovers, so why not? Kay had saved our chairs, but she had just as many admirers around her as the others did. Ken checked out the scene before he set his food down and sat with his legs on either side of it. He had already finished a hot dog by the time I got settled between him and Danielle. Because 3 men were keeping her busy, it took her a while to notice me and my food. She laughed and said something to Amy, who left her companion to come over, look at the plates beside me, and ask if I was going to share. I winked and asked what she wanted and what it was worth to her. She loved that enough to step closer and look down at my food. "Do you see something you like?" I asked, noticing her interest. "Yes, I do," she said, bending down to grab a slice of Texas sheet cake from my plate. That surprised me. I didn't expect her to come over like that. Her hand stopped right over my plate until she picked up a piece of cake. I was mesmerized for a moment. She stayed bent down and asked, "How much for this one?" "That's my favorite, but I'm happy to share if you'll sit with me on the ground and chat." She looked taken aback, as we hadn't talked much before, and she thought of herself as the plain one. She searched my face for any hidden meaning, but found none. So she sat down and relaxed her legs. We started talking, and even though she was a bit shy at first, she eventually opened up. The conversation flowed, and before long we began to feel more like friends. I enjoyed our chat, and it lasted until the others grew bored with their own companions and came back from shopping. I warned them, "The back of the wagon is getting full, so you need to be more careful about what you buy or be ready to hold your bags on your laps since the shops stay open until 6 tonight. And don't forget, there's a street dance later that we might want to join." Everyone but Kay walked away, busy thinking about shopping, most likely. Kay said, "I'll make sure they're back by 5. Just don't drink too much before you drive." I wasn't sure how she knew we were meeting the owner of the craft brewery for a tasting, but we went anyway. I had made some homemade brews before, but Kayla soon took over the conversation. She sounded like an experienced brewer, but looked like a charming young lady. I guessed she was around my age, even if she looked younger. Regardless, she made a great drink. I wasn't a big fan of the lighter beer, but the darker beers and the ale were tasty, and the conversation was enjoyable. For an hour, we were the only customers and got to know the real Kayla before more people arrived, making her busy. I saw her put on her game face when a big group of men came in and started to flirt. She was clever to flirt back to keep the drinks coming, but her cheerful side faded a bit. It was interesting to think about coming back next week when she was open again to see her true personality. We didn't need more drinks, so we said goodbye to her and walked down the street to find our friends. They had a nice crowd with them, with some people encouraging them to head to tonight's dance and festival while they were shopping for hats and Western wear. We stayed a little way off and found a metal craftsman nearby. I bought a set of wind chimes and a fancy rain gauge on a stand made of horseshoes. He would add my livestock brand and bring it back to town next week. It had been years since I owned cattle and horses, but maybe now I should buy some land and raise animals. I'd also need a tractor and a trailer for cattle, but I could probably work something out with Ken for the trailer since I wouldn't need it often, just like Ken did. I asked, "Do you know anyone with land for sale? I grew up on a ranch in South Texas, and I'm thinking about it." He looked puzzled and replied, "I might. How much do you want? And where?" "Enough to raise a few cattle, ideally close to you along this stretch of river." "How about a section by my western fence line?" he said, surprising me. "My uncle is the last in his family to hold the land he inherited, but he's getting older, has no kids, and could use the money for his wife's health. He wants to sell it as it is, but it needs work. Roads are overgrown, the fences need fixing, the ponds need cleaning, and the old homestead, well, it needs a lot of attention." My heart was racing, but I stayed calm. "I don't mind clearing brush, but it sounds like I'd need some heavy equipment." "That sounds about right. There are plenty of folks around here who do that work and can help with roads and fences. So, are you interested?" I nodded and said, "Yeah, definitely." He smiled. "We'll take the ATVs to look at it tomorrow afternoon after church and lunch. Want to join us?" The lunch is Mexican food, and it's the best I've ever had. Sure. What religion are you? And why haven't I heard about this place? We're Methodists, and anyone is welcome. The eatery is a food trailer at the Misty Moon, a small bar by the rivers not far from our home. You'll enjoy it. Even though we were across the street sitting on the courthouse steps, Kay knew we were there. She came out of the Western store, waved us over, and then went back inside after we waved back. I hope they don't want us to sit and watch them try on clothes, Ken said casually. Watching them is a bit distracting. I chuckled and agreed, then wondered what the clothes would be like since it was a Western store. As it turned out, quite attractive. They had denim jumpsuits, denim rompers, denim miniskirts, denim wrap skirts, and a denim sundress that showed off Gina's shoulders. We all want that dress, but she's the only one who can wear the available size, Amy complained after she noticed my expression. Turning to her, I said, "And I bet she'd love to have that cute outfit you're wearing. Could you turn around? I didn't get a good look at it the first time." She thought I was joking, but honestly, her outfit really stood out. It fit her nicely and highlighted her figure. Her legs looked great, too. After seeing how everyone looked, I knew the night would be lively. When I saw the group grow restless, 6 girls including Kay and a bunch of guys who thought they had special connections with one girl or another after some friendly flirting, I asked Rebecca, "Did you invite all these guys here and promise them something in return? They seem a bit too eager for a first meeting." She leaned toward me and said, "Some are from last night's dance, and yes, they do seem a bit possessive. A few others might have gotten a little carried away during the shopping trip. In hindsight, some of the outfits we tried on might have been a little much, but no promises were made." She paused for a moment. "Except for the promise we made to stick together as a group. Did Wanda and Trisha agree to that? They seem to be having too much fun and losing focus. They need to remember that not everyone here has good intentions. Maybe you should tell them yourself, then come dance with us. Gina says you're too serious." "I don't have a girlfriend here, but I feel a responsibility to keep everyone safe tonight. It's hard to enjoy when you're on high alert." Well, there's a tall guy with dark eyes behind you who looks like he's waiting for a chance to talk. Want to go say hi?" I looked back, got up with a smile, and greeted Bill like friends do. He's a big guy, over 6'5", and solid. "Great to see you. The reason for it isn't great, but it's been too long since we've had time together." "Yeah, it's probably because they didn't want us talking while they kept us apart. Now that we're here, we need to plan. I don't want to ignore what's going on," Bill replied. "Absolutely. But tonight, let me introduce you to some friends, and let's enjoy some dancing and drinks. I'm not making promises, but a few of these guys might need a reminder about respect." Bill grinned at that. He enjoys a challenge, and I wanted to keep things fun. I introduced him to the friends at our table, Rebecca, Amy, Ken, Kay, and the rest of the girls. Some of the girls were excited to meet him, while a few of the guys seemed less pleased about the attention he received. Just as I expected, the night was going to be eventful. With Wanda chatting with others, I took Trisha for a dance and gave her a friendly heads up. She seemed to hear me, even if barely. She was hard to watch, just like Wanda, who seemed more drunk, and Danny, who was definitely out of it. I walked straight over to them, glared at the guy with the beard who was holding her up, and took her to our table. I sat down, pulled her onto my lap, and began talking to her softly. She responded with a soft, nestled her head against me, and quickly fell asleep, or maybe fainted. "How much has she had to drink?" I asked the group at the table, my tone sharp. Amy said, "Not too much. She's not a heavy drinker, so I've been watching her. But she really likes you, so she might be pretending a bit." "No, she's out of it." "Does anyone know that guy who was all over her?" Ken and Kay shook their heads, but Amy said, "We met him and his friend after the dancing started. His name is Rance or something close to that, and his friend is Vic. They seemed friendly, but something felt off. I should have stayed to protect Danny. She's really innocent." "There are a couple of paramedics here. Find them and bring them over. She needs help," I instructed. And the local guys quickly went to look for them. I gently laid her on the table, and one of the girls covered her legs with a cloth. "Bill, you ready?" I asked, not bothering to look for him. "Always ready? Where are they?" Trying to blend in with the crowd, But there's only one way out. You head that way, and I'll guide them to you. We can stop them, but they need to be able to talk to the police." He nodded and slipped away while I kept my eyes on the guys. "We've got Danny. Go catch them," Kay shouted. I glanced back and saw Ken rushing toward the exit, too. I carefully maneuvered through the crowd unnoticed and got behind them. They were almost at the exit when they spotted Ken and Bill. Bill, who rarely mentioned his Cherokee roots, stood tall with his arms crossed, blocking the way out. They turned and started to backtrack, but then they saw me. I pointed at them and warned, "Stay right there and wait for the police. If you try to run, things won't go well." By then, the local guys had noticed us and approached in a line. Bill looked like a chief, and they looked like a group of old-time lawmen. As they got closer, Will spoke up. "This is your second chance, Rance. There won't be a third. Let's step outside to have a chat." The local guys must have recognized them because several hurried toward the exit. Sure enough, Rance and Vic climbed over the top of the fence, but fell into the darkness on the other side. Bill and Ken dashed off into the shadows, joining the locals. I didn't even make it to the opening before I heard the noises of struggle. I couldn't see what was happening, but I yelled, "Remember, they need to talk to the police." "Don't worry about it," said a young man next to me, smiling. "Gary's an off-duty deputy. He'll make sure they can confess after they get what's coming to them. His sister was hurt, so he doesn't have much sympathy. And we might want to head back inside," he added. "Too many people have seen us, and we don't want to confuse the witnesses." Knowing Bill and Ken and seeing the determination on the faces of the locals, I felt going back to check on Danny was the right choice. I found her with the paramedics, who were preparing to lift her onto a stretcher. Before they did, I asked, "What's happening? Is it that bad?" "We're taking her to the nearest hospital in Llano. Until we know what they gave her, we can't treat her properly, so we'll give her fluids to keep her hydrated." "Rohypnol! They drugged her," a young man said. "How do you know?" the EMT questioned. "They admitted it. Sheriff Jackson is with them now. He can tell you. A bunch of us heard them say it." The big man appeared and confirmed what the culprits had admitted. They thanked him and took her to the ambulance parked just outside. "Are they still alive?" I asked Bill quietly. "Yes, but only because we pulled Gary and Will off them." The sheriff didn't seem too worried. He told Gary to lock them up in a strong cell, and he'd check on them tomorrow. "I like it here. It feels like frontier justice." We got into the car and headed for the hospital, which was about 30 miles away. Kay, Ken, and Bill were in the car behind us, even though the girls said they should go home and rest. We didn't know how long we'd be at the hospital, but from my past experiences, it could be a while before she was seen. But not here. She was already being seen by a doctor by the time we arrived. It took some time, but once her friends shared their story, the doctor was open with information as it came. "The blood tests will take some time, but I was an ER doctor in Dallas before coming here. I think she has small amounts of flunitrazepam, Rohypnol, and MDMA, ecstasy, in her system." He looked at Bill and said, "If he had those amounts, he might feel a bit lively, but she weighs 111 pounds, so it affected her more seriously. We think she will be okay, but we need to monitor her tonight. If everything goes well, we'll let her go at 8. We don't allow non-family members to stay in her room, so you should rest as much as you can before then. I'll call you if anything changes, but I don't expect it to." We stepped outside and had our first disagreement. Some wanted to go back to the ranch, but everyone else wanted to stay. We ended up finding an old motel with 2 double rooms and a single. I let the others decide on sleeping arrangements and headed straight to the bathroom of one of the double rooms for a quick shower. I was done in 5 minutes and came out wearing shorts, finding Gina, Wanda, and Amy waiting. I moved around to the bed furthest from the bathroom, pulled the covers down, and lay down. The girls looked at me for a moment. Then I saw Gina box out the other 2 as she took her turn in the shower. When she came back out, Wanda and Amy were on the other bed. Gina looked at them and said, "Oh, no way." "Shouldn't have taken so long in the shower," Wanda replied. "Besides, aren't you 2 good friends?" Gina said, but climbed into the bed next to me, trying to stay close to the edge. I pretended to be asleep, but found her discomfort amusing. Once everyone was settled and the lights were off, I turned and propped myself up on one elbow, gave her a light kiss on the cheek, and said, "Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams, and don't let the bugs bite." I really did fall asleep and slept soundly all night, even with someone I cared about beside me. When I woke up, I was surprised to find my hand resting on her side, but when I moved it, she gently nudged it back. I cuddled her a bit closer and drifted back into my dreams. The sound of giggling woke us up together. Gina pushed my hand away and moved quickly from me at the same time. It was a fast move. Amy called out too late now as both held up their phones. "It is recorded for everyone to see. Just wait until we show Dana what her little sister has been doing. And how about your promises to the Group G? Not only getting close with a married man, but with Danny. Rebecca is going to be upset with you." Gina looked very worried. Her strong reaction showed she cared more about what Rebecca would say than Dana. So I joined in the fun. Cut her some slack, girls. She could not help herself. Gina screamed no and tried to hit me while she covered the phones. Amy and Wanda moved around and laughed. Finally, she ran into the bathroom. She came out 10 minutes later dressed and with her hair brushed. I spent the 10 minutes joking with Amy and Wanda. Gina had already broken the group agreement after all. She got dressed fast. I got dressed too. We waited in the car when the others came out at 7:30. Teasing Gina, then Wanda and Amy had been fun. But going to see Danielle was serious business. The doctor had not called. But still, what if she got worse? I knew Wanda and Amy would tease Gina more later, but now was not the time. Even so, Rebecca almost started something with a sharp question. Well, did everyone sleep well? All she got was yes and yeah as we drove toward the hospital. Danny was dressed and ready to go when we got there. She had her discharge papers. I spoke with Dr. Jones while the women gathered around their friend. "Nothing new to report," he said thankfully. "She can return to normal activities if she feels okay. If she feels bad again, she should see her doctor right away." We all climbed into the Jeep. Danny sat in front. She was quiet for a few minutes. Then she turned and said sorry for messing everything up. She got several minutes of "it was not your fault." Then they told her what happened to the men who had drugged her. Danny looked at me. "I did not hear your name mentioned. I thought a hothead like you would have gotten involved. It was good to hear her tease again." I replied, "I never got the chance. Those local boys you had charmed formed a group and took care of the bad guys. Honestly, though, little one, you need to be more careful. The doctor said you only weigh 111 pounds. That means you need to limit your drinking a lot. Never leave your drink alone and do not take open drinks from people you do not know well. You scared us badly." She cried a little. The others gently told me to go easy. But before we got back, she looked at me and said, "I know Danny. I should have used my common sense. I got caught up in the fun of the party. The local guys were great, and I let my guard down. I'm sorry for the trouble I caused. Thank you for helping me until the ambulance came. I'm glad they got hurt, but maybe I need a talking to for being so foolish." After more reassurance that it wasn't her fault, but the fault of the two wrongdoers, we reached the ranch. I told her to hold on, opened the doors, and helped Danny out. I took her hand and led her to a bench under a tree, where I had her sit on my lap. We had a calm talk, and I told her she was brave for going through what she did. She leaned on my shoulder and then gave me a kiss, thanking me for looking out for her. I quickly kissed her back and helped her get off my lap. She went back to her friends, except for Amy. Amy smiled and said, "That crush just got much bigger. Don't you hurt her when she comes to visit?" "What about you? Can I hurt you when you visit?" I asked. "Ha!" she laughed. "I'll hurt you. I may be small, but I'm strong, like Mighty Mouse." 30 minutes later, she came out wearing a Mighty Mouse t-shirt, showing it off while laughing. I laughed too, wondering about Danny coming back, about Amy returning, and whether she could really hurt me. I gave my number to everyone and asked them to call if they came to Fredericksburg or nearby. I got 6 nods, and they began packing up. "Wait! Don't I get a thank you for taking care of you all weekend?" Danny kissed me first, leaving me surprised. Then Gina and Rebecca came next, and I felt dizzy from their kisses. I started to wonder if Gina was trying to show off, or if she really liked me. And Rebecca? She seemed serious. Was Danny? Amy? It was hard to think clearly. Wanda and Trish were more playful, but the other 4 had me very confused. I really hoped they would call me back to visit. Bill moved his things into the trailer, then joined me on the couch to watch a new miniseries. He brought some drinks he bought when he got to Texas, and I got some bourbon out just in case. Chase, my dog, sniffed at us disapprovingly before settling down in his bed. He doesn't like loud noises. I started the show, and we watched a very touching performance starring my wife, his wife, and their mother. The scenes were difficult, but even more painful were the conversations, especially from the mother. After a few drinks, we made a fun highlight video and sent it to a family member known for causing trouble. He might be offended by what his wife said. Both Bill and I definitely were by what all 3 said about us. By the time we finished the last bottle and opened the bourbon, we were feeling pretty down. "I can't believe she fooled me for so long," Bill cried, a bit tipsy. "I must be the dumbest guy in all of Oklahoma." "Well, you're in Texas now, so there's more competition, and you're not at the top. I completely trusted her, until I didn't and hired the investigator. Looking back, she left a clear path that even a lost person could have followed. But instead, I kept buying her gifts and believing her stories that a simple phone call could have proved were lies." "No way, my friend. You can't beat my record," I replied. "So, what finally opened your eyes?" Bill asked. "I was working hard to get long-term contracts with 2 big developers, barely home. When I was, she seemed nice, but those warm welcomes turned into quick hugs, and home-cooked meals turned into takeout. I was too tired to want anything intimate every night, or even most nights, but on the rare occasions I did, she either turned me down or showed little interest. I could still make her happy, but it took a lot of effort, and it wasn't the same as before. After I landed both contracts, my team and I celebrated at the bar. We drank it all before closing, but during that time my assistant mentioned that Rita wasn't around much anymore compared to how she used to be. I was too tipsy then to notice how she said it, but the next day I thought about it. I went into her office, closed the door, and asked what she meant by that. She shrugged, saying she was just chatting, but her eyes avoided mine. That seemed to show she knew something I didn't, so I started paying more attention. That weekend, I finally realized Rita was out more often, saying she was helping care for her mother's illness. I became more aware, and sure enough, a trip to Oklahoma City was extended by her, saying she had to stay longer because of your wife. That raised my suspicions. I could have let it go, but when she came back, I noticed something that worried me. That pushed my concern up even higher, and my investigator set me up with someone in Oklahoma City. He followed them for 4 days, sent me the evidence, and wrote that I didn't need to continue the watch. It all happened every day. I don't know about you, but I can't handle cheating. Maybe a drunken night or a work fling once or twice, but over a dozen times in 4 days? I mean 12 different men. And honestly, Bill, she's not even close to the worst. Claudia is ahead by 2, and someone else is ahead by 3. I don't know the full count since she spent some nights elsewhere. I didn't want to believe you, Danny, but that little clip you sent broke me. After I went through my sadness, I started looking back, like you did, and there were signs everywhere, including times I caught her lying. How did you put it? A lost person on a drunk mule. I could hear my ancestors shaking their heads at me for not seeing the truth. Some people tried to persuade me to take a display tomahawk from the casino and harm those responsible. But being an Indian in prison means I don't have a group to connect with, like others do. Speaking of the casino, what's up with your job? I spoke to Uncle Anacona about it. He suggested I take 4 weeks of paid leave and then get back to him. He also mentioned that he hopes I use the education and skills he helped me gain, and that I don't come back to the res or anywhere close. Before you start job hunting, let me talk to Charlie about something we're planning. It would be great if we could work together. I really want to make sure they face consequences for what they did. Danny sighed, slapped Bill on his large arm, and said, I don't know about you, but I'm really tired and need a break. Let's talk again tomorrow. I have plenty of food right now, but I remember you eat quite a bit, so we might need to go shopping in a few days. See you in the morning, around 10, okay? The next day, even with hangover feelings, they didn't make it past 7 before Danny brewed coffee, and Bill showed up at his door with an empty cup. Did you check what's in the pantry? I know the fridge is empty and off, but what about basic supplies? We don't want to buy more than we need. Working together, they had more than enough food for the week if they were clever, so Danny called Charlie. "Does your lovely wife have your day planned, or can you join me for coffee and a chat?" "There's plenty of coffee and cups ready for you. Be here in 10, and you'll also get biscuits and sausage gravy along with scrambled eggs." Maybe he was bored, or maybe he heard food, but Chase jumped over the tailgate before Danny could lower it. A few minutes later, Kay welcomed them in, wearing white shorts and a bright yellow top. Danny had seen her many times over the years, but never looking so cheerful as she did now. "Wow, Kay, Charlie won't get any work done with you looking so good. I'm surprised we were invited for breakfast." She tilted her head and smiled playfully, replying, "I think he needs a break. He's not as energetic as he used to be." Charlie laughed. "That's not what she was saying last night when she mentioned needing some rest." They all chuckled, and Kay playfully ruffled Charlie's hair while he teased her back. "All right, let's enjoy our coffee and food," Kay told them. "Just fill your cups, take a seat, and I'll bring the food." 20 minutes later, Bill was still eating while Danny thought about loosening his belt. Kay then casually asked, "So, how were the movies last night?" They both winced, and Danny replied, "We can give you a rundown of the characters if you're interested. It was certainly eye-opening." Both of them looked intrigued, so Danny went to his pickup and returned with a USB. Kay commented, "I never really liked Rita. She was too self-centered and critical. I can't believe she let you go. She always mentioned what a great father you would be." "I don't think she meant to let me go. I feel like she wanted to use me for some tasks and her other connections for others. I almost wish I had my old phone. I'd like to know what she and my sister are saying and planning." Danny reached over and placed his hand on Bill's shoulder. "You know it's really my fault, right? I wasn't around much, not involved enough in our marriage, and I didn't treat her as well as I could have. I can only guess what other mistakes I made as a husband. But she'll want me back and have a plan for us to be happy together again if I let her be open with other men. Bill told me, there's a group here that can handle things. One call from me, and our issues will vanish, including their partners. That would make things easier." Charlie laughed, and Kay rolled her eyes. I said, "Changing the topic, let us give you our new phone numbers. We got new phones and changed our service. It might confuse them for a bit, though they'll likely hire people to track us down. Maybe we can have a few more days of peace before they find us." After we shared our numbers, Charlie asked, "Speaking of something else, are you two ready to head over to the home place?" I nodded, but Bill, looking embarrassed, said, "Yes, I'm part Cherokee, but I'm not much of a horse rider. Can I drive my truck instead?" Charlie smiled playfully and said, "Well, you don't think you can stay on a truck like we can on ATVs, do you?" Bill turned slightly red when Kay laughed, but he chuckled and stood up. "I guess if it doesn't throw me off like the one horse I tried to ride." Chase was excited to go do something, but upon seeing the ATVs, he wandered back to his spot under a tree with some water. As we walked to the barn, Charlie called the horses over and fed them. With a straight face, Kay said, "Isn't that a beautiful paint horse, Bill? I can picture you riding across the plains on that horse." Bill didn't react. "My family are farmers from North Carolina. We don't have any Plains Indian roots, but we do have a history. We walked the Trail of Tears because of Andrew Jackson, who we helped during the Battle of New Orleans. He rewarded us by taking our land in North Carolina and making us walk to Oklahoma during winter." Kay seemed unsettled and apologized. Bill said, "It's fine. A lot of people know the Cherokee name but don't realize we lived in houses, farmed, ran businesses, went to church, and mixed with Scottish and Irish settlers. My family is part of that history, and my great-grandpa taught me how to fiddle and dance before I turned 5. I can work a horse in the fields, but no one showed me how to ride one. My biggest mistake? Marrying someone wealthy. If I'd chosen someone from my culture, I wouldn't be in this situation." Charlie was right about needing ATVs. The roads at the home place were terrible. Many hadn't been used in a long time, and the brush was so thick we had to keep our arms and legs inside the guards to avoid getting scratched. We rode along the inner roads and some of the fence paths, making it as far as we could toward the river. "See those willows to the right?" Charlie said as we looked down from a bluff above the Llano River. "That was our swimming spot. I'm not sure if it's still there, but it used to be great. The water there was from 4 to 8 feet deep, and there were deep places in the limestone bank where the big catfish hid. We'd catch them, and some were huge. Those big ones were quite a challenge. Even with Charlie's excitement, the idea of reaching into a dark cave didn't sound appealing to me. However, my guide saw a trail leading down to the river, and the three men started to head down. Kay, with her bare legs, hesitated about going through the brush, rocks, and grass, but Charlie took out a couple of machetes from his ATV saddlebags, so she followed us. The scene was lovely. The river flowed gently over a mostly flat limestone bed with blue water on our side, showing where it was deeper. Charlie mentioned a bigger pool that used to be about 10 feet deep, and an old tree swing hung above it. Kids might have enjoyed it, but I thought my size would make it too risky to swing out. As we turned to leave, I noticed a possible old path zigzagging up the bluff. It looked overgrown and had some rock slides, but it might be usable if we could clear it. Coming closer on the ATVs, we saw a shed made of rusty tin, with an old tractor and various tools stored inside. The tractor was quite large, meant more for plowing, but it could help us fix that path. I knew I would need to brush up on my mechanical skills, which were as rusty as the equipment, but at least they were available for us. I estimated the cost of repairs to be quite high, so doing what I could by myself would save money and make me feel more connected to the place. Next to the shed was an old stone barn with a metal roof that still kept things dry despite its appearance. We looked inside using a flashlight Kay had brought, but the strong smell of bats drove us outside quickly. I knew they wouldn't harm us, but still, they were unsettling. We finally reached what Charlie called the homestead, and I was taken aback. Yes, it was in bad shape. It needed a new roof, porches, stairs, and windows, not to mention plumbing and electrical work. But wow, it was a real mid-1800s German rock house, 2 stories with a cellar. The cornerstones were impressive slabs of sandstone, and the arched doorways were very thick. The house was made of dark red sandstone, and despite standing for over 160 years, it had weathered quite well. The front door was wider and taller than usual, set in a tall arched doorway that was about 18 inches thick and beautifully carved. Most of the walls, inside and out, were similarly thick and had been the original outside walls. No one had cared for it in years, but they had kept the window glass intact and patched the roof, so the original wooden floors and doors were dirty but still sturdy. The wraparound porches and stairs were rotting, as were the wooden posts holding up the roof. The original layout was still there, with a thick stone wall. To the right was what looked like the kitchen, and to the left the master suite. Beyond the interior wall was a dining room on the right, and the remaining first floor was a large open space where meetings might have taken place before it became a living area. I struggled to hide my excitement and disappointment, knowing that there were representatives from the cellars with us. I was thrilled to have found such a historic gem, but I worried about being able to afford it, and I could tell Charlie and Kay noticed both feelings. "Danny, come see the fireplace in the middle of the living room," Kay encouraged, sounding like a real estate agent. "Look at this fireplace. Isn't that a beautiful mantel, hand-carved from an oak tree? Check out the chimney rising up the wall." There are smaller fireplaces on the second floor, and like this one, they have a place to gather around on both sides. The way the smoke rises from both floors is quite impressive for 1860, don't you think? There's a bigger fireplace in the kitchen that used to work as an oven, with a wide hearth. It was designed for cooking meals, boiling water, and preparing meats. You'll notice some marks when we go inside. The thick stone walls and big heavy curtains keep the house warm in winter and cool in summer. The ceiling fans help move the air to keep the comfort levels you want. The fireplace upstairs heats both bedrooms, so even if we have a long power outage like we did in 2020, you will still have heat and a place to cook. If you get a generator to keep your food cold, you'll be just fine no matter the weather. The more I looked around, the more I loved the place, even though my excitement turned to worry. It was a dream home, but I knew it was beyond my budget. You know how when you're shopping for a car, you try to hide which one you want until you get a good price? That was me, staring longingly at a shiny red car while the salesman raised the price. To make things even better, there were lots of antiques covered with old sheets and blankets. Some of them wouldn't fit in today's world, but many would be cherished treasures to me, like the handmade rocking chair by the fireplace. Of course, some furniture, like the 1950s sofa and love seat, needed new coverings or repairs, or they might have to be replaced. We climbed the surprisingly steady stairs to a spacious bedroom, which had big closets. Both bedrooms had decent bathrooms with clawfoot tubs, while the other furnishings were a mix of modern and slightly outdated. I hated to ask the price, but I did. Charlie hesitated and then said, "All right, since you seem really interested, I'll tell you the total cost, including my commission. If it's too much, my uncle might help with financing." The look on my face made Kay giggle, and then Charlie said, "With the friend discount, this 620-acre treasure, with the authentic German stone house and barn, furniture, and vehicles included, is only, wait for it, 6.2 million. I stared at him for a moment, expecting a joke. Given how pricey riverfront land is around here, the land alone was worth much more. Charlie raised his hands as if to defend against my disbelief and said, "Don't blame me. My uncle decided on the price, and it's not up for discussion." I paused for a moment and asked, "How do you feel about handshake deals? We could agree now, and I'll arrange the money and contracts for us to sign maybe on Thursday." He smiled and extended his hand. We shook. Then I said, "I have to ask you something, and we can work out a new deal based on your answer. Is your uncle all right mentally? I don't want to take advantage if he's not." Charlie and Kay laughed, and he replied, "I knew you had a kind heart. Don't worry about it. He's sharp as a tack. He offered the home place to all family members, and everyone declined, including me. I'd love to have it, but Kay and I already have too much land as it is. Uncle Joseph asked me to find someone who would take care of the old house, not someone who would just tear it down to build a holiday home. I think you would be perfect for this. With your background in construction, you can make the old place look beautiful again. Maybe even bring it back to how it was in the 1860s when it hosted gatherings, parties, and church events before the church was built a couple of miles away in the 1880s. I turned to Bill and said, "This is why I wanted you to hold off on job hunting. I wasn't sure what I was getting into or if I could afford it, but having a skilled carpenter and cabinet maker like you would be a blessing for restoring this house. Of course, I'll have a team here to help you, but I'd really like you to lead the project. There are so many beautiful wooden and stone details in the house that I want to keep." Bill was smiling. If he could choose, this is the kind of job he'd do all the time. Unfortunately, in Oklahoma City, there weren't many opportunities, so he worked security at a casino and did carpentry on the side. But deep down, he was a true craftsman. He also liked this area and the people he'd met, despite a few bad experiences. If a man was looking to start fresh, this seemed like a good place. Danny had come to the same conclusion when he found out about his wife's infidelity and was moving everything from Plano to here. They had filed for divorce, and he didn't think he could return to Oklahoma without a family to support him, so he was fully committed to moving. He still needed to have a talk with his wife, but he wasn't in any rush, just like Danny wasn't. He didn't have much to say, and he couldn't imagine anything she could say that would change his mind. Their family would surely want him to discuss it, though. They'd want to see if he and Danny would reconsider their divorce. They might try to convince him to give up the prenuptial agreements that were set in place. He earned the income in the family, but his wife had a significant inheritance, so it was unlikely a judge would grant her spousal support. Beyond that, they had their vehicles, a house she would keep because her father bought it, and their personal belongings. So, arguing over the prenuptial agreements or possessions seemed pointless. Danny had built up a construction business, but it was protected under the prenuptial agreement as well. It didn't really make sense why two women who had affairs more often than their husbands would want to get back together with them. Still, both he and Danny knew a confrontation was coming, like an unexpected storm. As soon as they announced their engagement, Rita's dad pushed for legal protection for her money. He wanted separate bank accounts because he worried that Danny's new business might not succeed. So, Danny set up a limited liability company, naming it DMC LLC, with himself as the owner. Rita and her dad didn't pay much attention to Danny's growing business, but he had a steady contract with Dallas for affordable housing. His work was reliable, and soon he got more contracts. Another housing project, a hotel for a major chain, a performance hall for a nearby school, and buildings for a military base in Fort Worth. Before long, he was hiring workers and leasing equipment. At that point, he decided he couldn't handle everything himself anymore. He hired a third office manager and a CFO, and then found the chief operating officer he needed. He didn't give them those titles because he wanted the company to be simple and flat, following the teachings of W.E. Deming that he learned in school. He believed in making it easy for everyone to share their ideas. He took care of what his employees needed and rarely questioned their requests because they always had good explanations. Being on site every day helped avoid the misunderstandings often seen in larger businesses. His COO, Roberto Flores, made sure to work on site most days as well. On one office day, he worked with the managers and the new accountant, Cindy Belvin. Cindy was single and quite attractive, but Danny kept his distance from relationships within the company, even though she was tempting, especially since he was married. In the past year, Danny focused on winning new contracts, including 2 significant ones that would last 5 years and possibly lead to even bigger opportunities. In the end, he succeeded with both contracts, which would ensure his team received better pay and benefits if everything went well. The $6.2 million contract was a big deal for him, and even though it decreased his savings for future projects, he was managing well. For years, he drove the same pickup truck and wore work clothes, except for meetings with clients. His only indulgence was in treating his wife, giving her a credit card with a $100,000 limit and leasing an expensive car to suit her lifestyle. Right now, she was driving a luxury SUV, which he planned to cancel soon. That decision would lead to interesting conversations, but he preferred some space from her for now. When his father-in-law called his new phone, it started respectfully. He thanked Danny for a video showing Rita and stated, "We had an agreement to keep things private, but that video shows she's not following it. Still, Danny, she loves you. She wants to have your children and enjoy quiet moments together as you get older. I think her mother and sister are to blame for this. I found out they have been influencing her for a long time. She was feeling lonely since you were away a lot, and they led her into temptation. She tells me, her father, that if you take her back, she promises to be faithful to you alone." Her dad was well connected around Oklahoma City, where the divorce was filed, so Danny was able to say calmly, "Wayne, did you hear the conversations? Watch the videos again and really listen this time." The 3 women insulted their husbands in so many ways, from saying they weren't smart to claiming they were weak. In that last video recorded in the hotel room, they talked about when this all started and why. If, after hearing all of that, you still think I should give her another chance, call me and we can discuss it. But I doubt you will. No one with any self-respect would tolerate the disrespect she and the others showed toward their husbands. You can handle things with your wife, but don't try to convince Bill and me to take ours back. That won't happen. The agreements your lawyers created, which all 4 of us signed, are the rules for ending these marriages, just as you intended. They will leave with their trust funds and whatever else they brought into the marriage, and that's it. However, I've added $100,000 for every year Rita and I were married, if she agrees to sign within a month. That's all Rita will get, and if she tries to fight me, or if Claudia tries to fight Bill, those videos might get out in the open, where they will be seen by your friends and business contacts. I took a deep breath to relax and asked, "Do we understand each other now?" "Yes, I understand. But my lawyers are searching for any mistake they made in that prenup. Rita deserves part of the business you built with her support, and I'm going to get it for her, videos aside. That spoiled person deserves nothing, and you know it. After the first year, she was in Oklahoma City as much as she was here, and she never showed any interest in my work or supported me while I put in all those hours to build it. She didn't even work, but she had a housekeeper and a cook. I gave her everything she wanted, from clothes and jewelry to cars and trips to amazing places. She seemed to think that meant she could do whatever she wanted. Don't think for a moment I won't cause trouble for your family, too. I know things about you that could cost you your position at your company and your role in the family estate. It could even get you in serious legal trouble. So take that, old man. You married a careless woman and raised careless people. That's your doing. I had to deal with it for a while, but that's over now, so back off or face the consequences." After a moment of sputtering, he responded, "And to think I believed you were too soft for business. I'll consider your offer and Bill's. He's with you, right? And get back to you. And take that, too." Roberto confirmed they had a small team that just finished an apartment building and said they had a month before their next project started. It was one of Danny's favorite teams, and he asked Sarah, one of the office managers, to find them a place to stay in Chance for a month, starting in 4 days. There was only one motel, but she found a nice house on a hill overlooking the town with 5 rooms and bathrooms on VRBO, and rented it for a month. That meant the 5-man crew would each have their own room and a backyard pool. The owner shared that he and his wife bought the house because they plan to move to Chance next July, before school starts. Renting it out through VRBO seemed like a good way to help pay the mortgage and keep it in good shape. There were ads in the paper for builders, but they were all booked for a while. Plumbers and electricians, maybe in a few months. I was so frustrated that I talked to Charlie. He made some calls, offered extra pay to workers who could start soon, and joked about Danny's skills when they agreed to help us. Up here, it's not just about what you know, it's about who you know and your ability to negotiate. I trust these workers, and once they've started, things will get easier, he said. Girls? Bill asked, surprised. Yep, said Charlie. Miss Maddie drives the bulldozer, and she's the best around. Grace, the welder, does great work, too. She shows her projects at craft fairs, but she was on vacation during our last one. They're both very talented, and you'll see them next week. Bill's stomach growled, reminding me I was hungry, too. I don't hear Kay or smell anything cooking. Is she out? I asked. Once a month, she goes out with friends, so she won't be back until later. Let's hop in my truck and I'll take you to a great BBQ place, hill country style, Charlie replied. As we drove closer to town, Charlie talked about the BBQ restaurant. They've been around since the 1950s, so their food is top-notch. Check out their celebrity board with photos of famous customers like Ray Price and the Cherokee Cowboys. They used to come here just for the BBQ, he chuckled. Sorry, Bill, but those cowboys weren't actual cowboys. Most were part of Hank Williams' band. Did you know Ray started his career as a vet? Bill said he couldn't wait to try the BBQ and asked what meats they had. You'll see in just a minute, Charlie said as he parked right in front of the restaurant, ignoring signs directing us to the back. We got out, stood in line, and looked at the wide variety of meats on the grill. A man was moving hot coals from a nearby fire pit, tossing them to keep the BBQ cooking perfectly. Can I help you? He asked as he came over. I was amazed by the selection and recognized the pork and beef ribs, brisket, pork loin, and chicken, but not some of the other options. As we turned to leave, he followed us inside carrying a tray piled with BBQ meats, including goat, lamb, and jalapenos wrapped in bacon and stuffed with brisket. I paid, which was over $100 for a feast that included potato salad, coleslaw, drinks, and apple cobbler. We also got free beans, bread, onion slices, pickles, and jars of pickled jalapenos on the tables. Charlie, what type of wood gives the brisket that amazing flavor? Bill asked. Post oak and mesquite, he replied. If you walk around back, you'll see stacks of it. Just don't chop down all the mesquite and oaks for grilling, I joked. We feasted until we were full and even took some leftovers home. Thanks to Charlie, we met many friendly people, some dining in and others taking food with them. As promised, the BBQ was delicious, but we all needed a nap after eating so much. Just before we left their house late that night, after enjoying some card games and drinks, Kay came home feeling cheerful and a bit tipsy. She was giggling, moving around a lot, sharing stories, and seemed really full of life. After a little while, Charlie leaned over and whispered, "See why I married her? This is how she used to be, but hasn't seemed like this since our kids moved away. Maybe she's taken a liking to both of you." She might have, and it was a warm hug that I remembered fondly when we left. The next day, we drove to San Angelo in Bill's truck. We bought him all the tools and supplies he needed, along with some custom paints I had picked out, with Kay's blessing. He also needed some hardware and materials, so we got those as well. There were extra things we needed too, like special protective clothing to clean out the barn. I was the only one in charge of the cleaning crew, but I bought an extra suit in case someone else wanted to help. I planned to take my shotgun for safety, since the barn was dark and creepy, filled with bats and all sorts of little creatures. Later on Friday afternoon, after preparing for the upcoming week, Bill came over smiling. Guess who just called? With that smile, I joked, "Maybe Claudia? Just kidding. I have no idea who." "Remember Trisha from your group of friends? She's going to visit her grandmother in Brownwood Saturday, but wants to come here that night and stay with me." I congratulated him, but I felt a bit envious. Out of all my friends, you'd think someone would have reached out to me by now. He went back to his trailer to tidy up, and I called my good friend Lyndon on his cell phone. I hadn't had the chance to call him before, but I knew he and some coworkers often went to a bar after work on Fridays, without their wives. We greeted each other, and he moved to a quieter spot near the restrooms to talk. He asked how things were going. "Not too bad," I replied, "but I'm calling to check on some news I just got. How long have you and our other friends been involved with my wife? And don't say you haven't. I have evidence." Lyndon and I had played cards before, and he knew I was serious. He paused, and I warned him. "I've got lots of proofs ready to send. If you don't give me a truthful answer, they're going to your wife and family. 5, 4, 3, 2. Wait. Okay, we've had a few moments with her, but you were too busy to notice, so it didn't really matter to you. She was flirty with us, and we didn't have the strength to say no." "So how long has this been happening, and who recorded what I received?" "I can't remember exactly when. I know you were busy with that first housing project in Dallas. Chris recorded those videos, and he shared them with the rest of us. I don't know how you ended up with some. You have 5 minutes to get everything to me. After that, I don't mind what happens with them, but I'll keep them as proof in case she doesn't sign the divorce papers by the deadline. If I send this, you won't tell my wife, right? Not if you send me everything and tell me the details about when and where those videos happened." In my upset mind, I thought, "Believe that if you want, but if she doesn't sign and I file for divorce, all of you will be named anyway." I didn't share those thoughts, but they rang true. I went outside, fed Chase, and got into my truck. I was feeling frustrated and needed a drink and some company. I found both at the craft brewery, where Kayla was happy to see me, and quickly poured our favorite dark beer. I say our because it's her special recipe, and we both enjoy it. I noticed the way she was dressed, in tight jeans that showed off her long legs. She was tall, around 5'8", and slim, which caught my eye. Sitting at the bar, I could see her moving around, serving drinks, and her appearance stood out more than I remembered. She had curly brown hair that hung to her shoulders and striking features. Overall, she was attractive enough to grab my attention. As I watched her, I thought about how my past experiences had changed my views. I used to be choosy, but after meeting several women who turned out to be quite different from what I expected, I became more open-minded. Some didn't put much effort into relationships, while others were enthusiastic, which made me rethink what I truly wanted. I could see in Kayla a mix of warmth and some sadness, likely from past experiences with her partner and others. I thought she might be fun to spend time with, but I wasn't sure she was looking for anything serious. I decided to just watch and see if she would suggest something casual. Suddenly, someone spoke up from behind me. "Aren't you the one who helped out at the dance last weekend? I just wanted to thank you, on behalf of all the girls and women who face trouble." I turned around, and my mouth almost dropped. She wasn't just pretty. She had a natural beauty with long blonde hair and wore a fitted t-shirt with a fun saying. Her jeans fit her nicely, and she had a friendly, innocent vibe that was hard to resist. I thought about how I should probably be cautious, but she seemed so genuine that I got a bit lost in the moment. "I appreciate that, but I can't take all the credit. It was a team effort with the young men who stepped in and the professionals who helped afterwards. But if you want to thank me, that's fine. Now, who are you, and who are you here with?" She pointed to a table and started walking that way. "I'm Brooklyn, and I'm here with my friends Carrie and Sherry. I turned 21 last weekend, so they brought me here to enjoy a legal drink in a lively place." I laughed. "The fact that you think this is the real deal instead of a craft brewery shows me that all three of you just turned 21, right?" She smiled and nodded, then introduced me to her friends, who looked nice in their own way. "Would you like to join us?" Brooklyn asked. "Sure. But if you're all really 21, I'll buy you your first drink here, and I can get your friends one too if they want. Everyone's actually 21, right?" They eagerly agreed, and I added, "Just a heads up, Kayla knows everyone here, but you might need to show your IDs if she doesn't recognize you." They nodded again, so I asked which drinks they liked, knowing they probably had no idea. They didn't, so I suggested I'd bring a sampler so they could try different ones before I bought a round. Kayla looked amused as I walked over. Young girls trying to charm the older guy? She teased lightly. But she added, I know Brooklyn from the store. She's a good kid who has had a rough time, and she really just turned 21 last week. I also know Carrie, whose mother has had a few husbands, and Sherry, who comes from a nice family. She's studying at Angelo State, while the other two are working hard to save to go to cosmetology or trade school. Brooklyn is smart and athletic. She was part of a winning relay team 2 years ago and graduated in the top 10% of her class. But her mother, who has her own issues, brings her down, calling her names and making her feel worthless. Because of that, she struggles to have the confidence to apply for scholarships, so she works a low-paying job, hoping to eventually move away from her mother, who likely takes her money as fast as she earns it. As she poured the sampler, Brooklyn shifted from someone I'd noticed to someone I wanted to help. Most of the drinks made the girls make faces, but Brooklyn liked the house special I enjoyed, and the others chose the ale. I was surprised because I thought they'd go for the light blonde, but they didn't like it at all. Now I had a dark beer drinker and 2 ale drinkers to watch over, and I wasn't going to let them leave drunk. There was a food truck outside, and since they hadn't eaten yet, I bought them some food to help with the drinks. There was a jukebox in a weatherproof shed, and they wanted to dance. I agreed to just country and classic rock, so they danced together to their favorite pop and hip-hop songs, while I took turns dancing with them. Although they were 21 and I was close to 30, we still found ways to enjoy the evening with just one more round ordered. I noticed it was odd to see so many people over 40 around, but not many younger folks, especially given the limited options for entertainment that I knew about. As I was helping them into Sherry's car, Brooklyn asked, If you're free tomorrow night, would you like to come to the movies with us? It's getting great reviews, and everyone is talking about how good it is. I almost laughed, but she was serious. Realistically, I didn't have anything else to do, so I said yes and asked what time I should pick them up. They talked for a moment and then asked if I could pick them up at Sherry's house. Okay, where is that? I asked. Follow this road for a mile and turn left on a private road called Owens Lane. I live in the only house on that road about half a mile down. If you give me your number, I can send you a pin. I hesitated, then told them, This number is private, so promise not to share it if I give it to you, okay? On Saturday morning, I worked on the tractor and shredder and had them ready before I ate my sandwich and chips. After lunch, I started shredding where I could, avoiding the thick, thorny brush. I finished the middle of the roads, but I needed a different machine to clear the brush along the edges. There were 2 old fields that looked promising, but the best one was the overgrown field behind the barn, stretching a 1/4 mile north. It was wide enough to grow vegetables in the spring and oats in the fall, just like Charlie and Kay. I planned to fence off half of it with a deer-proof fence, but first I needed to clear it with a bulldozer, then plow, rake, and disc it. I had the tools, but did I have time for this growing season? Probably not, but I could still plant a nice fall garden if I worked hard. Tricia and Bill met me at the RV, and she laughed when she saw me. I was wearing a straw hat, long sleeves, and work boots, looking quite messy. They invited me to clean up and go with them to a festival in Fredericksburg, but I declined. Sorry, but I have plans tonight. 3 friends from the brewery asked me to join them, I added. I'm not sure how it will go, but they have a plan. Tricia shook her head, not amused. I have friends who won't be happy knowing you're dating while still married. I considered being rude and pointing out that Bill was just as married as I was, but instead I suggested, Why don't you take her to the movies first, Bill? Then she can explain to her friends why we see things differently. With that, I turned and went inside to clean up. As I was getting dressed, Bill called out, Danny, she wants to see it now so we can head to the festival. That's fine, I replied. When I walked through the living room to leave, I heard Tricia exclaim, Oh my gosh, I never thought anyone could do that. Why would you want to? That's so surprising. I laughed a bit as I left, imagining Rebecca's reaction when Tricia told her. My dates were dressed nicely, probably because Brooklyn and Carrie had only one set of fancy clothes, and Sherry joined them. They were a bit too dressed up for the old theater, but I complimented their outfits and helped them into my truck for the short ride to town. Tickets were $4 each, and the hot dogs and drinks were $2 each, along with a tub of popcorn. We shared 2 tubs of popcorn, enjoyed chili dogs with chips, and candy for dessert. It was the most affordable dinner and movie for 4 people. I noticed many high school and college students there, and they looked at my 3 friends and me with curiosity. I took my daughters to the theater, walked down the aisle, let Brooklyn in, and sat between her and Carrie. Some people might have thought they were from a rough background in school, but with an older man like me, they looked great in their pretty dresses. Other girls seemed jealous, and the boys looked on with envy. They probably misunderstood these girls just because they wore old clothes from a discount store. The romantic comedy we watched was entertaining and well done. Of course, all the characters found their true love and lived happily ever after, which my girls really enjoyed. I didn't want to hurt their feelings, so I kept my thoughts to myself. Sherry had to head back to college the next day, and the others had early shifts at work, so I took them back to Sherry's place and told them they were the best dates I'd had in a long time. This earned me a quick kiss from Sherry, a shy peck from Carrie, and a playful kiss from Brooklyn. She texted me a thank you on my way home, so I had her number too. I thought that was sweet because she was nice and fun. However, I felt hesitant to get too close to someone who might be struggling. On Sunday, we attended church and went out to lunch afterward with Kay and Charlie. We met a lot of new people, and the sermon was thought-provoking, so I felt the time was well spent. On our way back, Kay faced us and said, "We saw the movie, and all I can say is God bless you both. Those 3 women don't seem to offer anything good, so you need to protect yourself from them. They shouldn't take anything from you, and we're here to help, so don't hesitate to reach out." Bill and I were at the family place early Monday morning. I realized how useful ATVs could be out there, so I ordered 3. Unfortunately, that meant I had to clean up the barn and fix it to store them. I drove Charlie's trailer up to the barn doors, cleared the dirt away from the bottom, and managed to open them. Countless insects flew out, followed by various small animals I didn't recognize, all scurrying and making noise. Some refused to move and seemed angry that I was disturbing their homes. However, I had a lamp that lit up the dark barn and a shotgun that I fired into the air as a warning. Most of the animals scattered, but one hissing creature stayed behind an old hay bale. I pulled the bale aside with one hand while pointing my shotgun with the other. It turned out the hissing noise was just a possum. I tried to move it along with a rake, but it kept hissing. Eventually, it slowly left through a hole in the wall. Closing that hole would be my first task after I took all the junk to the dump. As I started cleaning, I found it wasn't all junk, which slowed me down. After we returned to the trailer, Bill said, "I know the crew is on their way, but I need someone to help with tasks, bring tools, and so on. I can't keep doing everything alone." He added, "And when will your electrician be here? I don't like how the lights dim when I use too many tools." I didn't have an answer about the electrician, so I said, "I could use some help too. That barn is a bigger job than I expected. We have the crew, the road workers, and the woman with the bulldozer all coming this week, which will make things even more hectic." That's when I remembered that Brooklyn and Carrie were working jobs with low pay and no benefits. What if I hired them to help, paid them the same as our other workers, and covered their insurance? They might really like the offer. I sent a text to Brooklyn asking her to call me after work. A moment later, I realized I should explain better, so I sent another message that said, "I might have jobs for you and Carrie." She replied with a thumbs up and 4 okay. I gave a thumbs up back and went to tell Bill. He was unsure about having a young helper, but he needed one. "One of them will call me after work at 4. We'll put it on speaker, and we can listen together. If they are interested, we can plan to meet with them when we can all be together." By 4 o'clock, we were both pretty tired, so we sat on the ATVs in the shade of an oak tree on a hill, got a connection, and talked to Brooklyn. I made sure she knew these jobs were temporary, but could become permanent if they worked hard and were dependable. She was so excited that I could almost hear her jumping with joy. Bill smiled at her happiness and laughed when Carrie joined in with more excitement and said she was ready to start. Carrie did not need to give notice for her current job, but Brooklyn felt she should finish stocking shelves on Thursday before starting, asking about Friday. I said yes to Friday for Brooklyn and tomorrow for Carrie. They thanked Bill and me, and I ended the call. "This should be interesting, right? They sound young. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate each of them?" "Well, I don't want to just look at them that way. But Carrie's looks are an 8, her figure is 8.5, and she has a nice personality. But there's more to discuss about both after. Brooklyn could be a 9 for looks, a 9.5 for her figure, but I'm less sure about her personality because she seems very shy. But here's the thing. Both come from tough backgrounds. Brooklyn's mother struggles with alcohol and drugs and has not been nice to her. In school, she faced a lot of challenges, but managed to graduate in the top 10% of her class. She hopes to save enough money for cosmetology school. Does that help clarify? I think her confidence is a bit low, but she does have some self-respect. Bill nodded, understanding. I moved on to talk about Carrie. I don't know much about Carrie's school or sports skills, but I heard she had a rough childhood trying to deal with her mom and stepdads, who faced many problems with drugs and alcohol. She seems strong despite everything. Based on a nice goodnight gesture she gave me after our outing, she might just be looking for kindness. I'm not sure. The third girl I know is Sherry, a junior at Angelo State. I think she and her parents want to help Brooklyn and Carrie find a better path. I want to be clear. I am not just thinking with my feelings. I truly believe they will be great workers who will appreciate the job and the support. I know both girls could use some dental care, and maybe braces, but honestly, they already shine with their natural beauty, bright smiles, and happy personalities. I'm not saying to ignore their past, but we should think about where they come from before treating them poorly. In my view, they need support and guidance before they are ready for serious relationships, I said. Bill laughed and added, "You really do have a talent for noticing attractive women. Neither of them has any ties to rich families, right?" Both girls returned to their jobs to speak with their bosses. Carrie's boss just shrugged and gave her a check, letting her know she would be starting a new job tomorrow. Brooklyn's boss offered her a little more money but got angry and called her ungrateful when she declined. He stormed to the office, handed her the final check, and told her to leave, so she would also begin her new job tomorrow. We returned to the camp, took showers, and invited Kay and Charlie to join us for dinner at a place of their choice. Charlie was ready when we drove up and offered us a drink. Classy Kay was ready quickly and picked the restaurant. "There's a new Italian place downtown, and the owner and chefs are all from Italy. We've been wanting to try it, so let's go together." The food was so good that we started talking about how they got their unique herbs and spices. Our compliments brought the chef out, but he just smiled and said, "Trade secrets. I will say we grow as many as we can and order the rest from home, where my sister runs a much bigger pizzeria. I hope to open a place in a big city someday, but for now, I love it here in our little town." After a delicious cone of gelato, we took a walk around the square and did some window shopping. The girls wore work jeans and shoes, but I wasn't sure if they had long-sleeve shirts or anything else they might need. Kay noticed my interest in the Western wear shop and seemed curious, so I explained about the girls we hired for some help. She looked unsure at first, maybe thinking I had bad intentions. When she figured out that I had good intentions, she began to suggest ideas. "For the tough jobs you'll have, the lumber and hardware store is a good choice," she said. "The first time you go there, take the girls with you so they can pick out work shirts, pants, socks, and boots. Maybe even straw hats. You can say it's part of what you're providing for them, or they can repay you once they start earning." She sighed. "They are really sweet girls, but they are a bit naive. They have potential, but I worry about them. They were good students but had no social life, probably because of their mothers and the people around them. Kids around here don't want to get involved with families that struggle, and that sadly describes their mothers more than it does them. I'm sure the parents from the better families kept their kids away from Carrie and Brooklyn, too. I wouldn't say people look down on them, since they are smart, attractive, and good at sports. Carrie played softball and Brooklyn ran track, winning medals at state. But I heard that the only boys interested in them were older guys and some high school boys wanting the same things. You know what I mean. If you want, I can help you find some nice clothes for work and maybe some casual outfits so they won't always wear the same things," I offered. She smiled and said we could take her up on the casual clothes and maybe some dressy ones soon, once we figured out if they could spare time for work and be reliable. She laughed. "These girls were cleaning, cooking, and doing laundry since they started kindergarten. They've done more chores than many people have done in a lifetime, and they even got awards for perfect attendance at school, despite having no one to wake or feed them and no car to take them around. Bill chuckled. If they can handle all that, working for me should be easy. But I doubt they have seen a barn like the one Danny and his helper will tackle this week. The next morning, it rained heavily, so I sent a text telling them we would pick them up and asking where to meet. Can you come by and pick us up? Carrie is with me because we planned to use Mom's old car, but it wouldn't start. I was about to text you, she replied. I followed the map to an old house in a rough part of town. It wasn't the best neighborhood, and the closest neighbor was a few blocks away unless someone was living in the rundown trailers nearby. You never know, but for some people, having a roof over their heads at night is all they want or can manage. Some might also be trying to avoid immigration enforcement if they are undocumented, like many workers in construction and landscaping. Day workers used to gather at certain places in North Dallas, and those of us in construction would come by and choose a few to help. We learned that many of them were skilled and always had documents to show if immigration agencies visited a job site. That frustrated me a bit. We were paying more than double the minimum wage to new workers, plus we provided insurance, but our job ads went unanswered. However, word of mouth worked well for us, and we built a workforce that many envied, mostly based on referrals. I needed to learn more Spanish than I did in high school and college. I also had to train myself to understand their quick speech. Before long, they were better at English than I was at Spanish, and we had conversations that mixed both languages. Bill was chatting with the girls when we arrived at a store that felt more like an old general store than a hardware store. It had a lot of items, including tools, building supplies, and more. I took the girls to the section for work clothes and told them we provide proper clothing for new employees. They could choose 5 pairs of pants, 5 long-sleeved work shirts, and a pair of steel-toed boots. They looked surprised and a bit unsure. "Do you buy clothes for all new workers?" Brooklyn asked. "When they will be working in tough conditions like you will, yes," I replied. "Oh, and don't forget a straw hat to protect your lovely faces and skin from the sun." I left them to choose hats, but the options seemed limited to denim or khaki. I handed my shopping list to the woman at the register and then went to the section for ammunition. A friendly woman around 45 approached and asked if she could assist me. "You sure can. I have an M1 Garand that uses Springfield 30-06 rounds, and I see you have those hard-to-find 8-shot clips," she smiled. "We have a hunter who also uses that ammo, so we keep it stocked. How many do you want?" I ordered 4 clips, a box of 22 shorts, a box of 22 long rifles, and a box of 410 shells. "Do you have a rat and snake problem?" she asked. "Definitely rats, and I think some rattlesnakes are living in the barn with them. I usually leave snakes alone, but I don't want to work near dangerous ones." "That makes sense, but be careful not to accidentally harm the bull snakes or king snakes as they eat the rattlers." I assured her I would be careful, even if I found snakes quite frightening when they suddenly appeared. We both laughed at my feigned shiver. She had been observing me closely and then recognized me. "You're Kay and Charlie's friend, the one who bought the old Horster place?" I nodded, and she continued. "Then I recommend a snake charmer for tight spaces like a barn instead of a regular 410. A local guy makes them. They're well made but affordable. Want to take a look?" It had a pistol grip with a short stock and a forestock under the barrel. The barrel was a little shorter than my 410 shotgun, but not by much. Camille showed me how to hold and aim it from my right hip with my left hand on the forestock and suggested I buy another box of shells to practice. I raised an eyebrow, concerned about the cost, as 410 shells seemed pricey. She smiled and said, "If you're good with a pistol, you might not need too many, but shooting from the hip is different. If you want others to learn too, it's worth spending the money. You don't want to miss a rattlesnake that's about to strike." I thought of Bill, Brooklyn, and Carrie, and decided to buy the extra box. You never know who might need to use it in a tight spot. Bill returned with painting supplies, just as the girls brought their work clothes to the counter. I paid for everything, and was directed to the back to pick up the lumber and screen wire for the barn. The rain had stopped, so the boys loaded the pickup without getting wet. Since it was almost time to eat, I stopped at a butcher's shop that offered deli sandwiches. I found they also had fresh and smoked sausage, dried sausage, and 3 types of beef jerky. I got some of each, joking about how they must have fancy seasonings due to the prices. We made our way down the only road suitable for a pickup and parked under a very old live oak tree between the house and the barn. Maybe it wasn't 1,000 years old, but it was definitely large and impressive. We enjoyed our sandwiches and chips, tried the jerky, and drank cold Dr. Pepper before Bill went to work in the kitchen. I headed to the barn, and the girls went inside to change into their new work clothes. I wasn't sure who would work with Bill and who would work with me, but Brooklyn appeared in the doorway, paused to look around, and wow. Work clothes are usually practical and tough, but somehow Brooklyn made them look stylish. The jeans she wore fit well enough to catch your attention, and the denim shirt she had on seemed snug under the pockets. I thought about switching her out with Carrie to help me focus, but since she was here, I said, "Let's start by moving these old straw bales to the door and loading them on the trailer." She came over, watched me lift one, and then took the next one in the small pile. She looked strong and moved quickly. By 2 p.m., we had finished loading the hay onto the trailer, dealt with a snake, and made a possum leave its home. There were various old things in the barn that previous families had stored away, like old furniture and items they no longer needed. We began taking them out and cleaning them up, excited by the treasures we found. Some of it was just old junk, but much of it was in good condition and looked much better after some cleaning. We were having so much fun that we lost track of time and were surprised when Bill and Carrie came outside. Carrie didn't fill out her work clothes like Brooklyn, but she looked good in them nonetheless. We grabbed a Dr. Pepper and sat in a circle on 4 old wooden lawn chairs we had cleaned up. They were a bit wobbly, but safe enough to use. Bill and Carrie shared what they had done inside, and we shared our barn discoveries. Bill mentioned, "I heard the shot. Was that your new tool?" "Yes, it was the first shot, and it worked perfectly. It's very useful. By the way, I want all 3 of you to practice using it just in case of emergencies." I noticed the surprised looks on the girls' faces and asked, "Wait, you haven't used a gun before?" They hadn't, so we decided to schedule some time tomorrow for them to learn how to use the .22, the .410 shotgun, and the other tool. As we talked about our plans for the next day, I heard the sound of trucks approaching. The crew from Denton arrived first, and right behind them was a woman driving a dozer and an unusual vehicle. Bill welcomed the dozer operator. I spoke to the crew and then approached her. She explained, "I would have arrived sooner, but I was concerned about the rain. It didn't hold me back, and the forecast looks good. I'll unload the equipment, park the trailer, and be back in the morning." She looked over at the crew and the girls, asking, "Have you found tasks for them? How are they doing?" "Today is the first day, but Bill says Carrie worked hard, and Brooklyn had a great start in my opinion. They might be tired and want to rest tomorrow, but overall so far so good," I replied. "I don't think so," she said. "These are good girls who have faced tough lives, and they deserve a chance. Just remember, life has not been easy for them." I nodded and reassured her. "I put them on the payroll with benefits, and I treat my employees well. You can ask the crew from Denton for references. Yes, they are good-looking young women, but I would never exploit anyone." She seemed content with my response and said she would check in with them. After that, she unloaded her equipment, parked the trailer, and drove off, waving goodbye. I was really impressed. She was about Carrie's size and looked young, but she handled that heavy equipment like a professional and shifted gears on the truck like a skilled driver. When I got back to the shade, the crew members had drinks in hand and were joking with the pretty girls who weren't sure how to react. The crew chief, Angel, looked at me with a little smile and asked, "Hey, bossman, is your wife part Cherokee, like Bill? I'm asking because she seems pretty upset this week. From what I hear, she's been visiting your office and every work site, asking everyone where you are. We're the only ones who know, and we're not scared of her, even if she is a bit fiery. We told her we didn't speak English and just stood there looking lost. She got mad and left in a huff." Having a little trouble at home? I decided to just be honest. It might be because she's been acting a bit wild lately. All those trips to take care of Mom? Yep, she, her mom, and Bill's wife, Claudia, were busy with a lot of guys, which might explain why their team hasn't been doing well. Angel looked surprised. 2 of the crew frowned and mumbled in Spanish, while 2 others looked down, shaking their heads. But it was Carrie and Brooklyn's shocked reactions that caught my attention. They didn't say a word in front of the group, but I knew we would talk about it soon, especially on the way back to town. In an upset voice, Brooklyn said, "Danny, I can't believe your wife was unfaithful to you. You're such a great guy. How could she do that?" I chuckled a bit. "Guess she didn't see me the same way. But I'm not the only one hurting. Bill's wife was doing the same thing at the same time. Just to be clear, neither of us knew what kind of person we were marrying. In fact, Rita was really tough to get close to, but when she decided she wanted to be with other people, she should have told me and ended things, instead of making me feel ashamed." Bill's frustration was clear. "Everyone told me about her family's reputation and her attitude, but Claudia claimed she had changed. We were supposed to marry, have kids, and be happy. She said she was off birth control, but maybe it's lucky she didn't get pregnant in 3 years of marriage." "Yeah, I've heard the same story," I replied. "She told me to wait a year for my business to grow, and then we'd start a family. When she still wouldn't stop using birth control 3 years later, I should have seen the signs. Instead of starting a family, it was always about a bigger house or nicer car. Now I get it. Maybe she didn't want kids." Brooklyn leaned up from behind me, patted my shoulder, and said, "You should marry someone who appreciates you. Rich people can be so cold." I thought that was a kind gesture, but I preferred to change the subject. "So living in chance all your life, how much contact have you had with rich people?" The girls chuckled. They looked at each other in the rearview mirror. This time, Carrie spoke up. "When you grow up as poor as we were, everyone else seems rich. Even when we made friends with richer kids, their parents would not let them have us over to play. They would not let their sons date us either. People called us some very mean names. Do you mean as pretty as you two are? You never dated?" Bill asked in surprise. "Well, honestly, kids here do not date much. We meet up in groups. We were never with the rich crowd. But in school, we were accepted. We were good students. We joined sports and school events." Brooklyn added we were invited to the prom every year and to other events too. So it was not all bad. The hardest part for both of us was our mother's bad reputations. It brought us a lot of unwanted attention from grown men and older boys. It was hard on a girl to have to lock her bedroom door at night and say no to those men, Carrie said. Brooklyn got her phone for safety when she was 11. I got one when I turned 12. Until then, I was skinny and no one noticed. But as soon as I grew, I got lots of unwanted attention from Mama's men. That happened to Brooklyn earlier. She had to threaten to tell the school counselor to get the phone. After we threatened to call for help, the men usually stopped. I called once. It caused some trouble, but things got better after that. But not for Brooklyn. The way she said that showed there was more. So I looked at Brooklyn in the mirror, and Bill shifted so he could see her. "Go on, tell them," Carrie insisted. "They shared their story with you this afternoon." Brooklyn looked pale, then blushed deep red. She then told us about a very scary night with one of her mother's boyfriends. It was a frightening experience that hurt her badly. Despite their warnings, she called 911 as soon as they sped away on their motorcycles. They were never caught, and she faced judgment from the community. This happened 2 years ago when she was 19. The local health clinic offered free counseling sessions every other week for a year, which helped her deal with the situation and the people who knew about it. She shared her story calmly but avoided eye contact. Then she began to sit up straighter, square her shoulders, look at each person and said, "I'm not proud of what happened or how my life has gone so far, but I'm not what some people say I am. I am a proud graduate of Chance High School. I earned a medal in track, and I'm learning to live on my own while supporting my mom so she doesn't have to rely on bad people for money. I survived, and I want to build a better life for my future kids." Moved by her story, but knowing she didn't want pity, I asked, "What do you girls hope to be doing in 5 years? Just working here, or do you have bigger dreams?" Both girls bristled, which was encouraging. Then Carrie replied, "I want to get a college degree to become a nurse, but I may need to start as a licensed vocational nurse until I save more money. There are many jobs for nurses, and I love helping people heal. Just ask Brooklyn. I helped her when she was hurt." Having overcome her past, Brooklyn chimed in, "She is. She's great with people. I'd love to have her as my nurse." "And you, Brooklyn? Do you see yourself stocking shelves or doing something else with your honors diploma?" She looked toward the mirror and said, "I want to be a teacher. I was part of a program in high school where I got to help younger students. I also helped out in study hall and got an award for being helpful to others. She paused and added, like Carrie, it's more of a dream right now because I'm trying to be independent while taking care of my mom's bills and groceries. On my way to their homes, we passed a Mexican food cafe a few blocks away. Is that place good? I asked, and both girls nodded eagerly. Would you like to stop for a meal? I'm treating, and you can take home food for your mom. After the long workday, I thought they might decline, but they replied without hesitation. Yes, that would be great. So I turned the car around. Carrie took a brush from her bag and smoothed her hair, while Brooklyn adjusted her ponytail. Neither of them used makeup, and when we got out, they tucked in their shirts neatly and walked with me to the entrance. It must be tough to work all day, fix your hair, tuck in your shirt, and still look nice, Bill whispered. I just nodded in agreement. They might face tough challenges, but they were naturally pretty and carried themselves well. After guiding us to a table in the back near the tea pitchers, both girls went to the restroom and quickly came back, looking a little more polished. They were friendly with the waitress, who came right over to take our orders. We talked about the town, our work today, and plans for tomorrow. Then they told us not to worry about picking them up or taking them home. Miss Maddie would handle that. I felt happy. She took my challenge seriously and really cared about the girls. I wondered how many others were quietly helping and cheering them on. After we ate, I asked Brooklyn if her mom's car was working now. She said no, it wouldn't start, so we stopped with our headlights shining on the front of the car. We opened the hood and used a flashlight to check the battery. The cables were rusty and loose. Bill removed them, and I opened a diet soda to clean the rust off the connectors. After cleaning, Bill put them back on and tightened them. We told Brooklyn to try starting the car again. It started right up, but it was clear the engine was still struggling. Before we left, I called Bill and the girls over to my pickup and warned, Brooklyn, if you ever hear a motorbike pull up to your house again or see one parked there when you come home, grab your phone and go. Get away fast, find a safe place, and call 911. Then call me or Bill. Do whatever you need to do to stay safe. There's a chance they might come back after you called the police. I wanted to prepare them for the reality of the situation. Their faces showed they understood the seriousness as they walked away, just like we did. Wednesday was busy at the ranch because the fence and road crews arrived too. Maddie opened the main road to the house first and then tackled the other road we had cleared with saws and clippers. That big machine worked hard, clearing out brush and leaving a wide path along each road, with bits of debris spread across it. The fencing crew did what they could before Maddie moved along the fence lines with Charlie and Kay's help. Danny had the road crew working on the entry road, which would be fixed up, drained, and paved for all-weather use. Chase had been staying with Kay and Charlie while we worked. At first, he didn't like the ATVs, but then decided that Kay's air conditioning and snacks were much better than the outside heat. After Charlie mentioned that Chase was starting to prefer staying inside, Danny made him join us in the truck, and he got to help Brooklyn in the barn. The animal smells were intriguing, and with Brooklyn being so nice, he was happy even in the warm spring weather. Meanwhile, I was busy moving from one contractor to another and trying to use the tractor to clear the old road to the river. It was getting late, and the crews had left by the time I finished. I parked the tractor behind the barn, checked on the bobcat I would need the next day, and then drove back to the homestead to see Bill. I found Bill relaxing with the two girls under the big oak tree, enjoying cold drinks. "How's it going?" I asked. Bill replied, "Carrie and I finished the kitchen and started on the stairs. We should have those done by noon tomorrow, and then we'll begin working on the windows in the living and dining room. After that, I said I wanted to clean the stonework downstairs before we fix the floors. Cleaning the stonework would need more hands." I turned to Brooklyn, who was petting the sleepy silver dog resting on her feet. "Chase and I did a lot, too. He was a huge help in keeping pests away and even caught some rats and mice. Next, I need help putting up the wire mesh over the windows and digging a trench to bury the wire and secure it at the base of the walls. Do you know anyone reliable available tomorrow? My usual helper is a bit scattered." I nodded, realizing I hadn't been helpful, and promised to ask Angel about a couple of guys to install the mesh over the high windows and along the barn walls to keep critters out. "Did you get anything done?" Carrie teased. Besides chatting with people? Actually, I replied, come with me and I'll show you. And you too, lazy pup. Chase got up with a grunt, then came over and jumped in when we loaded up. He stood on the wheel well to see over the cab, becoming our lookout. I parked on the bluff above the swimming hole and pointed to the zigzag path I had cleared down to the water. There were still a few big rocks in the way, but I believed I could fix those with a small dozer or a bobcat. Let's go, I called out as I climbed out, and the others began to unload as well. As soon as I lowered the tailgate, Chase jumped out, prancing and whining. What's wrong with him? Brooklyn asked. He smells something, and I think I know what it is, I replied as I started down the new path I hoped would lead to a small road. We stopped at the bend to see the fish swimming in the shallow water near the shore, but could only spot some perch. Meanwhile, Chase was trying his best to catch one, standing still in the water and watching for movement. We continued to the river, and Brooklyn noted how nice the bank looked after being leveled. Carrie knelt down to test the water. Wow! The temperature is perfect! We should swim! She said excitedly. Brooklyn laughed, which made me hesitate about joining in, and Bill started taking off his boots. Swimming in broad daylight with neighbors nearby? Probably not a great idea, but I seemed to be the only one thinking that. Boots, socks, and jeans were left on the shore, and Carrie was already wading in wearing her top and bottoms. Brooklyn started to unbutton her shirt but looked at me. I shook my head. She giggled again and waded out with her shirt partly buttoned. I took off my boots but focused on her laughing and trying to keep her balance on the slippery rocks. She and Carrie reached a shallow spot in the river, sat on the edge, and dangled their legs in the cool water. Bill looked unsure of himself as he tried to join them, lifting his feet awkwardly. Once I got a few feet out, I probably looked just as funny. We made it, and the girls shifted to make room on their ledge. They splashed their feet, we chatted, and I couldn't help but notice the water glistening off their legs. Not wanting to disturb the moment, I stood up, adjusted my shorts, and said I would check the swimming hole to see if there were any logs or debris in it. They climbed out and followed me, catching Chase's attention enough for him to leave his fishing adventure and join us. I reached the bottom with my arms above my head. There were no branches. The bottom was hard rock. The swimming hole was deep enough. It measured as deep as my body with arms stretched high. The pool was about 20 feet wide and 30 feet long. It made a nice swimming spot. Soon the others joined me. They stepped into the deep water and started swimming around. I swam over to the area with the tree swing. I checked it for logs and debris. This time I was not lucky. A large log had washed in. It was too heavy to move by hand. I figured a tractor could pull it out with a chain. There was a low spot with no high bank. The water was shallow there. We would need to burn the log once it dried. Otherwise, it might wash back in during the next rise. Once the log was gone, the smaller debris would likely wash away. Now I just needed to make a road upriver strong enough for the tractor. That meant cutting into the sloping hill by the water to make room. The tractor would need space to pass the log once it was on shore. It would be a difficult task that took real skill. The girls found the water fun for swimming and exploring. We all enjoyed the cool pool together. Bill and I talked about the plan quietly. We knew it would take hard work. Later in the afternoon, we spoke softly. We both noticed the girls were pretty. Still, we agreed to keep everything professional. They worked for us, and that was important. We decided to pass on any other ideas for now. Let's take a break and calm ourselves. Danny, Bill said as we moved away and swam into deeper water, if these two are not good examples, I'd really like to see the other girls in their group. I called for them to get dressed so we could clean up and eat. After some delay and complaints, they finally did. We waited a bit and then got dressed ourselves. From what I could see, our curious neighbors didn't notice us, so we avoided trouble there. However, we didn't reach town until after dark because Charlie wanted to invite us over for dinner and to chat about our progress. Dinner was simple but very tasty, and the conversation was enjoyable, continuing until Carrie yawned, signaling that it was time for bed. They had been charming all day and night, and the Horsters seemed just as fond of Carrie and me as we were of them. After we dropped them off, Bill and I were planning to have a serious talk, as we were in a tricky situation we weren't ready to face yet. We were still officially married, even if it felt distant. As we got close to Brooklyn's house, Carrie leaned against the window and suddenly cried out, "Oh no!" when she noticed the bikes hidden in the alley. "Those are the bikes they used that night when—" "It's okay," I cut in. "We're going to the sheriff's office to report them." If an experienced officer had been there, I believe they would have handled it well, but the two new officers made it a bit chaotic. They first couldn't locate the warrant and then decided to call for backup over the police radio. Before I could stop them, they broadcast the situation for everyone in the county to hear, even Brooklyn's mother. The sheriff called to warn them, and he was just seconds behind the other deputy when he arrived at Brooklyn's mother's house, but by then the bikes had vanished. He left the other deputy to manage the troubled mother and went back to the office. Meanwhile, the two new deputies were still figuring out what to do next. When the sheriff arrived, clearly upset, it was entertaining to see how nervous the deputies became. Still, I felt frustrated that they let two criminals escape again. Once he was finished with them, the sheriff sincerely apologized to Brooklyn. The two deputies then began notifying other law enforcement and issuing alerts about the escaped individuals, while I worried about what those criminals might do next, since they had already tried to avoid capture. We waited for a while until the sheriff came back outside and said, "The bad news is, they might be hiding around town or have escaped again since no one has seen them. The good news is, the state's organized crime team is already investigating the biker gang. Because of their other crimes and the felony case here, Hernandez and McGowan are on the 10 most wanted list, which means they are in serious trouble. And Brooklyn, I assure you, when they are caught, they will face the law fully, and the district attorney is eager to present your case to a jury. But tonight you need a safe place to stay, somewhere where you can feel secure. Do you have such a place? If not, you're welcome to sleep on my couch." She looked at me, but I already knew what I wanted to say. "Sheriff, she can stay with Charlie and Kay. Between Bill and me, we have enough means to defend ourselves, and Charlie is even better prepared. She will be safe until you tell us she can go back to her mother." "Will you check on her?" Brooklyn asked the sheriff. "I can't help but worry about her." "We will, and you can call her. Just don't let her know where you are." To avoid waking Kay and Charlie at 2 in the morning, Brooklyn stayed with me that night. After she took a shower and put on pajamas, I sat with her on the sofa, holding her as she cried. I was also thinking about what I would do when I found Hernandez and McGowan. When she finally fell asleep on my chest, I picked her up and moved her to my bed, with Chase at her feet. After putting on a dry shirt, I lay down on the lower bunk, surrounded by some safety equipment just in case. When we arrived at the worksite, all 4 crews were busy. Everyone said hello, but no one asked where we had been. Brooklyn received extra attention, and she understood why. At lunch under the oak tree, as we had started doing, she spoke up. "Thank you all for caring, but I'm okay, I promise." She said this very seriously, then added with a smile, "I got to sleep in a big bed last night, with a guard dog and a watchful friend. I've never felt so safe as I do now, knowing all of you support me. Danny and Bill have been teaching Carrie and me to shoot, and I believe that reason goes beyond just protecting against snakes and pests. Anyway, those guys are among the top 10 most wanted, so they will be trying to avoid getting caught. Or stopped, hopefully," Miss Maddie said, earning a lot of agreement. "But until that happens, we should all be ready just in case," she continued. "People like them don't like being refused, and Brooklyn has done that a couple of times now. I can see a long way from my machine. You might spot them first, so let's all stay alert and careful." Charlie and Kay embraced Brooklyn and invited Chase and me to stay with them until things were safer. Instead of improving, the situation got more serious later that afternoon. "Mr. McMillan," the sheriff said, "I need to inform you, Kay, Charlie, and Brooklyn, that McGowan and Hernandez are believed to still be in the county. We don't think they are looking for Brooklyn, but it's possible. Her statement, along with their other crimes, could mean a long time in prison, so we can't predict what they will do. Please call us if anything seems wrong. We will have a deputy patrolling the road, but you're likely to see them before we do." I quickly told Bill, and he came with more supplies. I prepared my equipment while Bill and Charlie did the same. Kay was helping Brooklyn close the blinds and curtains. Chase was anxious, but stayed near Brooklyn, sensing that something was off. When she sat down, he jumped on the couch beside her, looked at her, and rested his head in her lap. I was about to tell him to get down, but Charlie stopped me. It's Kay's couch, and she's the one who taught him to get up there, so just let it be. Charlie took the watch from 9 until midnight, Bill took over until 3, and I took the last watch from 3 until 6, when everyone would wake up. Chase chose to be a personal bodyguard and spent the night next to her bed. I thought I heard something around 3:30, so I quietly walked to her door and opened it. All I heard was a low growl, which meant he was on duty, even if he seemed to be sleeping. He had never protected anyone as thoroughly as he did while I stayed home with him, especially after Rita came back from her trip to Oklahoma. He didn't like her right from the start, showing he could judge character well. He got along with most women, like Brooklyn, Kay, Danielle, and Gina. But Rita was different. That was enough said about her. That night was quiet, but the next morning everyone who was working was prepared. I equipped Angel, Juan, Armando, Lupe, and Chuy to be safe, especially considering the challenges some might face while driving. In Texas, the laws should be clear, but not everyone is treated the same. When Maddie called, we all answered, men and women from different backgrounds. None of us shied away. Bill and Carrie made their calls from the house, and Maddie called while I kept Brooklyn hidden in the barn. Maddie tracked Hernandez and McGowan when they crossed the river and came onto my land. 3 men were clearing brush nearby, but they quickly vanished, as Maddie said. Armando, Lupe, and Chuy got into position and confronted the newcomers. The men turned and fired shots, but Lupe was in a safe spot, so their shots missed. They should have stayed hidden, but instead, they rushed forward, which gave Chuy and Armando clear shots. The plan was to disarm them if possible, but if not, act quickly. They ended up unable to move. There was a lot of shouting from them while they were on the ground until Bill, Maddie, and I fired shots into the dirt near them, making them drop their weapons. Then they started pleading. Just like in old westerns, I poked Hernandez in the hip while Maddie nudged McGowan a bit harder. When they quieted down, we jokingly discussed various painful options, wondering how to handle them. When Bill joined in, explaining some old methods used by people in the past, they looked quite frightened. Just then, the sheriff and some state troopers arrived, interrupting everything. They asked us many questions about what happened, even with the injured men on the ground asking for help. We debated the quickest way to move them from the brush to the road, and focused more on speed than on their comfort. We made some simple stretchers from nearby sticks and brush and loaded them up to get them moving. We tried to convince Chase to help, but he was more focused on biting their hands and growling at them. So, Bill and I took charge. We didn't find the easiest or smoothest paths, which caused some bumping around with the injured individuals. I ignored their complaints and threats by reminding them that they were the ones who came onto my land while armed. If they hadn't shot at Bill, Maddie and I wouldn't have had to fire back. We even asked if they would have preferred we aimed higher, which got us a few moments of whimpering instead of threats. Yes, Chuy and Armando fired shots, but having the landowner and a local person pulling the trigger made it a lot clearer for everyone. After the state troopers and a deputy left to take the suspects to the hospital and watch over them, the game warden joked with us. He playfully suggested that the evidence made it look like Maddie and I didn't fire. Rather, it seemed several people were waiting for the intruders and shot them after they had fired multiple rounds. I shrugged, and Maddie replied with anger, saying, "Are you calling me a liar? There have been game wardens who disappeared in Chauncey County for saying less. I just told you what the evidence suggested. I would never call you a liar, Miss Maddie. I believe you completely, and I'll stand by that." He was mostly joking, but he mentioned that a game warden had gone missing while working on a ranch years ago. It seems he had a crush on Maddie, like he did on a few other local girls. They were all at the ranch when he was checking on hunters, and after that, he was never seen again. The girls didn't know anything about it, they never found him or any clues, and his truck was located in a completely different area. It was said that some parents went to complain to the local sheriff about the game warden, and the case was eventually put on hold because there was no solid evidence. That's how Charlie told the story. I was left wondering what would be left if something terrible happened to you, and if there would be enough to bury. Brooklyn wasn't hurt by the gunfire, but seeing the people who had harmed her, even in bad shape, was tough for her. Kay arranged for her counselor to meet with her again, and she took her the next day. I got busy with what needed to be done in the barn before the guys installed the wire mesh, adjusted the doors, and fixed the window shutters. The last big task was checking and repairing the roof, which the crew would take care of. The fence crew was halfway done, and Maddie was about 80% finished with the roads and fences. She still had to clear the new field with a tractor. The soil looked good, but there could be rocks underneath. Once the field was ready, the fence crew would put up gates and a high fence to keep out deer and some small animals. My goal was to grow vegetables, berries, and fruits for myself and my neighbors. I started the Bobcat to work on widening the switchback. I was making progress, but it was slow and a bit scary. I didn't want to fall over the edge while operating the Bobcat. I did wear the safety harness that many skilled operators often forget. Things looked different when I was on foot, so I parked the machine and walked back down. It wasn't done yet, but maybe tomorrow. I still needed to clear more space on the switchback and take down a bit more of the rock ledge, which might give me enough material. As I walked along the riverbank, I enjoyed the peaceful surroundings and took a moment to celebrate the recent purchase and improvements we were making. This was a big step for me financially and personally. I was stepping away from running my construction company, which I had built from a small team, to a much larger operation with great contracts that lasted for years. With our solid reputation, more jobs were on the way. My new role was to secure these opportunities, and I could do that from anywhere, including this new place, once we had internet and reliable power. However, I would need a plane to get around, which I wasn't thrilled about due to costs and time. There might be other options for getting transportation, but I needed to think it through carefully. I headed upstream to check out the diving platform and rope swing. It was clear they needed to be replaced. I could handle the work myself, but a couple of my former crew members could likely do it faster and better since I wasn't fond of climbing high ladders after a past experience. I continued my walk, trying to stay clear of the thorny plants until I reached the edge of my property. The fence along the hillside had been damaged, so I planned to notify the repair crew. I was about halfway back to the road when I noticed some movement and color on the opposite bank. Given our recent concerns, I paused behind a large willow tree to keep myself hidden. Peeking around the tree, I scanned the area. I hadn't seen anything initially, and I wondered if I was imagining things. A few minutes went by with me remaining cautious, and then I spotted her. I crouched down and observed. She was stealthy, but her brightly colored clothes stood out against the greenery. Not seeing any threat, I stepped out and called to her. She hesitated at first, clearly surprised, but then stepped into view and introduced herself. "Hi. I hope I didn't frighten you. I'm Gwen Stockton. We own the land across from you. This land." She seemed a bit nervous. She looked to be in her 30s and had a strong presence. I introduced myself as Danny McMillan and mentioned that I had just bought the property, so we were now neighbors. I invited her to wade across the river to join me for a drink with some others later. She seemed surprised at my invitation, and I reassured her that there would be plenty for everyone. She laughed and, after realizing the offer was genuine, made her way to the riverbank. With confidence, she took off her shoes, rolled up her jeans, and stepped into the shallow water. Once she reached my side, she found a comfortable spot on a rock, letting her feet dry in the warm afternoon air. As we chatted about meeting friends later, I found her even more interesting up close. She had a great smile, which made her all the more appealing. She soon put her socks and shoes back on while we talked about the river that separated our properties. Together, we walked up the embankment. "Nice path. I didn't think you would do so well," I said playfully. "Do you not have anything else to do?" I asked, joking a bit rudely. "How do you know all this?" She laughed, but then turned serious. "I do have a life, but I spend a lot of time alone while my husband travels. He had health issues, and that changed our relationship a lot. But he's a good man, so I try not to complain. Anyway, nothing ever happens on my side of the river, but it's been exciting since you arrived." Her honesty surprised me and made me like her more. I wondered if she needed a friend, especially considering her situation. Since we stepped out of the bushes, our friends had been watching us closely. My group looked curious, and the locals treated her like they knew her. "Everyone, this is Gwen Stockton from across the river. She bravely crossed the water just to meet you and grab a drink." I took out 2 drinks from the cooler, and Maddie laughed. "Gwen drinks wine. She goes to all the wine bars on Thursday nights." Gwen smiled and took the drink I offered. That's true, Maddie. But tonight's Monday, and I enjoy beer on Mondays. From there, things went smoothly, and by the time we finished our conversation, she was seen as a good neighbor. Chase liked her too, and was happy when we offered her a ride back to the river or even to her place. She smiled and said, "You've never tried to drive across the river? The bridge is about 4 miles that way, and then you can circle back on my road. It's a 10-mile trip both ways." Sounds good. Is your husband home, or would you like to share a steak at the general store? My husband isn't home, but I won't go anywhere dressed like this. If we both can change first, I'd love to try their steaks. We stopped at my trailer. She stepped inside and looked around while I got ready. She smiled when I came back. "You clean up nicely," she said with a laugh. "Are you bringing this beautiful dog? They allow pets on leashes." "Can I put your leash on?" I asked the dog. "Gwen wants you to come with us, and we're having steak." I'm sure he wanted to go just because Gwen asked, but the promise of steak made him eager, and he waited at the door. Chase also wanted to see Gwen, but unlike me, he was allowed into her room. Maybe later I would have a chance. It's been a long time. "So," I started smoothly, "since you shared about your marriage, would you like me to share about mine?" She nodded, and I told her my story during our drive. She listened with sympathy and then asked, "So, if she can explain, are you taking her back?" "Not a chance," I replied firmly. "You can't explain 2 years of dishonesty." "Good to know. Do you see yourself as free now, even if it's not official yet?" "Absolutely. She broke our vows long ago. I don't feel bound by them now." "That's good to know," she replied thoughtfully. She spent supper looking at me closely. She even challenged me a few times on my thoughts about cheating and other hard topics. Chase watched us both, too. He waited for the next piece of steak one of us would slip him. "There are a few things I did not tell you before about my marriage," she said. "Robbie and I were high school sweethearts. We broke up to attend different colleges. We got back together in our hometown the Christmas after we graduated. Things went well for about a year. Then we started arguing over small things. He kept the job he still has. I got a job at a bank. I had a degree in money matters, but I soon found I had no real interest in the work. Maybe I was unhappy about my job and took it out on him, but he got unhappy too and started more fights than I did. Later that year, I got a phone call from a man. He told me my husband and his wife were having an affair. He lived in a town on Robbie route. He sent me pictures, times, and dates. Robbie was gone for a week. So I spoke with a lawyer and said I wanted a divorce. But before I could file, Robbie came home. He told me the lab results from his yearly check showed his numbers had risen sharply. He had to see a specialist because it could mean cancer or a serious infection. So I did not confront him. I went with him to the doctor. The doctor checked him and set up more tests. They came back positive for cancer. He started full treatment right away with radiation and then medicine. Later, the doctors said the cancer was gone. We celebrated the good news. After that, we faced something no one at 30 years old expects. He had complete trouble with the physical side of marriage. When nothing helped, Robbie gave up. That is when he let me go free. We are not divorced, but I live here and he lives in Dallas or wherever his job takes him. I thought about filing for divorce, but it seemed unkind because of his condition. He comes by from time to time. He brings gifts and affection. He puts money in my account and says he hopes I am happy. Then he leaves again. I do not hear from him for weeks or months. I live on the land my grandparents left me. Their old car is now mine. I live off the money they left me as their only grandchild. It is a good life. But I am bored. I am not getting the closeness I need or want. On the other hand, I am not looking for a full romantic relationship. I just want some warm company. So given the situations we find ourselves in, would you like to spend some time with me? I'm on birth control, so if you're sure you're healthy, we can skip the extra protection, which I dislike. How about coming over to my place for some fun? She was serious about being innocent and open to trying new things that weren't too overwhelming. For our first get-together, we kept it simple and started with the most common way. Then, I changed positions, and she enjoyed helping herself feel good. She reacted excitedly, so I knew she liked it. We tried another position where she seemed to enjoy things even more while exploring what felt nice for her. While she didn't react the same way this time, she still had a strong experience that was almost contagious. She attempted a different position, but it didn't quite work for her. We eventually got tired and decided to lie together and relax, drifting off to sleep. When we woke up, we felt good lying together. I thought it was nice to be connected in that way. She had a fancy coffee machine and made delicious coffee, but I felt like the best part of the morning was about our time together. I left her cozy and happy in her chair while I got ready for work. Chase had gone to have breakfast with Kay, and I found a note from Bill saying he took him to work next to Brooklyn at the barn. She seemed calmer and stronger than before. We discussed tough topics she hadn't thought about, and I found her ideas impressive. She reminded me of a character from a show, and even with the good time I had the night before, I felt a little distracted. I needed to be careful around her, or I knew I might do something unwise. Later, while having dinner with Kay and Charlie, she shared an idea her study group had come up with. Jean Ann has a niece starting college this summer. Her parents got her a 3-bedroom condo near campus, and she needs another roommate. The school counselor says Carrie and Brooklyn can get almost all the grants based on their family's money situation. She thinks we can set them up well, but they'll have to work a few hours each week for some of the grants. Carrie wants to become a nurse, and there's a great college nearby with a health sciences center. Another student from their school will be starting her second year and needs a compatible roommate. Her last roommate had issues, so she's happy to help Carrie get settled and show her around. We have places for Carrie and Brooklyn, all college costs covered, and good roommates lined up. We want to set up accounts for them to use for fun, like clothing and outings, so they feel comfortable. Isn't that exciting? Wow, that's really exciting. I'd love to help them with their spending fund. By the way, where is Brooklyn going? I was curious about her plans. To a place where a Texas-based motorcycle gang won't find her. For a girl who thinks that shopping in her hometown is exciting, going to the University of Washington in Seattle could be a big change, she said, staying calm, though Charlie seemed a bit amused. And that is where you come in. She looks up to you and respects you. Maybe you can help her see the good side of it. She told me she turned down scholarships from Texas Tech because it was too far. So yeah, Seattle is a long way. Kay had an idea. The first summer term starts June 1st, and today is May 5th. What if you took her up there? Let her meet the roommate and her family. Go along when they show her around. Me and what other person as a chaperone. Just Brooklyn and I looks bad for me and for her. But if a member of your study club comes along, sure, I will be happy to go and do what I can to encourage her. We were afraid you would want that. Unfortunately, I am the only one who can get away that week. Well, then, I teased, after a quick look at Charlie. We need to stay in different hotels at least. Charlie smiled. We already have round-trip plane tickets ready on a friend's airline card. If we cancel, she gets her money back. But I hope you and I and whoever else it takes can talk her into at least going and giving it a look. I will start working on her tomorrow. You work on her tomorrow night. We will see how it goes. I think Carrie will like the idea right away. Brooklyn probably could not even find Seattle on a map. Meanwhile, Charlie can start looking for a hotel for you in Seattle and one for me in Vancouver. That turned out to be easy. Brooklyn was ready for a change. Getting away from the trouble with the group made sense. She knew where Seattle was, but not much else. So Kay and Charlie flew up there. I stayed behind to talk with Rita and Claudia. They began by looking sorry. They apologized. Then they tried to put the blame on their mother. I know I should have had the courage to tell you, but I did not want to lose the love of my life. She and some of her friends threatened to send you bad videos. After that, she insisted we help with men she was doing business with, or she would ruin our marriages. Each time Mother made us come, she would pressure us. I could not believe some of the things they made us do. But after the first few times, we had no choice. They had videos and said they would destroy our marriages and good names unless we did what they wanted. Rita even cried a little, though the tears seemed fake. I listened calmly until the crying started. Then I showed them my own videos and recordings. When she saw what I had, she got very angry. She screamed and made new threats. I laughed at her. I reminded her of the agreement she and her father made me sign before we married. My lawyers said it could not be broken, so she needed to leave and live off her large family money. That made her even madder. She made fresh threats about lawyers and powerful friends who would cause big trouble for me and my work sites. I thanked her for clarifying things. I mentioned that the judge in our divorce trial would likely find her words interesting, and I pointed out that I was recording our conversation. She suddenly got upset, stood up, and tried to hurt me, but I pushed the table towards her, causing her to fall back. And thanks for that as well. By nightfall, I will have restraining orders keeping you away from me, my work sites, and our old home in Plano. If I'm lucky, the court will see what you've done as threats, which could lead to you facing serious consequences. The people she was with drove away in a new car, which her father had bought for her after she had to return her fancy SUV. Bill and I shared our stories and watched the videos before bringing them to the sheriff. He looked at them, then sent us to the courthouse, where we filled out forms for a protective order against our estranged wives. The order would protect us and our properties, and the clerk mentioned that the judge would likely approve them before the end of the day. Not sure where to deliver the orders, I hired private investigators to find our wives and keep an eye on our homes. We sat outside on the steps of the old courthouse. I called back home to update my father about the situation and the protective orders. Thankfully, I recorded our conversation, and so did Bill, because my father made even more serious threats against us and my business. We crossed the street again and let the sheriff hear that conversation. This time, he went with us to amend our request to include our father-in-law and spoke with the district attorney about further legal steps. Before he went into the meeting, he advised us to head back home and take precautions. Instead, we drove to Llano and ordered 3 handmade rifles from a local gunsmith. He needed a couple of hours to put them together and test them, so we enjoyed some barbecue and looked around the town, visiting the historic jail nearby. The rifles, sometimes called defensive rifles, were our way of protecting ourselves from any unexpected trouble. I had spent nearly 4 weeks working on my new ranch. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was certainly presentable for guests. Carrie had become quite skilled at woodworking alongside Bill, and they had the house looking better than I hoped. The electricians and plumbers had completed their work with minimal issues, but updating an old rock house for modern use required some adjustments. Our next project was to install beadboard paneling in the bedrooms and the main living areas to cover the wires. Kay and her friends had taken my credit card to shop for antiques, and we also moved a trailer full of furniture to be reupholstered by a craftsman who had a big shop out in the country. He had originally planned to get to it when he had time, but after some chats and a good incentive, he agreed to work on it sooner. Charlie had been right. To succeed in this area, you had to be good at negotiating and sometimes even persuading people to prioritize your needs. Bill was very interested in the house, so it was being carefully fixed up. Brooklyn and the D-Mac crew turned the barn into a lively space, though some antiques and furniture from the house were stored at the far end under tarps. The good furniture was kept on the part of the barn with the original wooden floor, while the rest had dirt. The crew fixed the damaged wooden boards and covered the rest of the barn's floor with new wood. They hung old-fashioned light fixtures that had bright modern bulbs, so the place was well lit at night, perfect for a party or dance if anyone wanted. The lawn looked fantastic after planting 36 pallets of native buffalo grass, and painters were coming next week to paint and stain the porches. Maddie and her team were finished, but the road crew still needed to install drainage pipes in the back pasture. There was an old water tank that Maddie cleaned out before leaving, and fixing the drainage would provide water for animals in that area. She also helped clear out some land behind the barn, so I could start preparing it for planting. The weather was warming up every day, but I got lucky with a week of light rain and a night of storms that made the soil easier to work with. Once it dried a bit, I kept working it until it was ready for autumn crops. On a whim, I also decided to clear a couple of acres in another field nearby. I planned to plant oats this year, and if the weather cooperated, grain the following year. I loved hunting quail and doves almost as much as deer and fishing. I'd let the oats grow before letting cattle graze on them. Planting grain would attract even more deer, doves, and quails to the ranch. Charlie, Kay, and Brooklyn were gone for a week, but when they returned, my apprentice wasn't with them. They said Brooklyn and her potential roommate had quickly become friends, and Brooklyn was feeling encouraged enough to enroll for the summer semester at Washington. She wasn't sure about committing long-term, but was willing to give it a try. Kay was gathering nice clothes for her and buying other things she might need for summer, like hoodies and light jackets. They handed me a sealed envelope, which I put away before offering to buy a laptop for Carrie and Brooklyn. If you order online, send Brooklyn's to her new place. We're also shipping her clothes as soon as we buy what she needs. And don't worry about the payment. Our women's club has collected funds for this, Kay said. Okay, but if you need extra help, just tell me. We all want her to do well in college and pursue her teaching degree. We need more teachers like her, I replied. Kay nodded but didn't say much. After saying our goodbyes, I went back to my RV. I waited until after my shower and sandwich dinner to open Brooklyn's letter. While I relaxed in my recliner with my feet up and Chase napping nearby, I turned on the TV and found an adventure movie. I read the letter twice, folded it back up, and stored it carefully in a drawer. After thinking about its contents for a while, I let out a deep sigh and switched the channel, needing a distraction from the film. The next movie channel showed a romantic story, which I quickly skipped over. I really didn't need a romance tonight. I decided to go to bed, which puzzled Chase. "Why are we going to bed so early?" he asked, tilting his head to the side with a confused look on his face. "I need to rest and think a little bit. Your friend Brooklyn gave me a headache." At the mention of Brooklyn, he perked up and looked around, whining a little. "Yeah, I know. I feel the same way." Gwen was innocent in some ways, but she was also on a quest for deeper understanding of relationships. She taught me a lot about feelings and connection, just as I guided her through new experiences. I think she spent time each day learning, as her insights clearly grew rapidly. Being with her felt very different from my past experiences. She wanted us both to enjoy our time together and feel connected. My earlier experiences were much more one-sided, but with Gwen, I finally understood the true meaning of sharing pleasure. Sometimes we spent a long time preparing and exploring together, building excitement until that wonderful moment of reward. I learned so much. I was busy on the farm most days, but we would find time to meet under the trees near the river for fun adventures. One day, after some time together, she lay on a blanket next to me, feeling the warm breeze. "Danny, these weeks have been amazing. I never thought I could find someone so caring, so eager to share and learn together. I think you might be talking about yourself, sweetness. I didn't know the connections I had were so simple. I may have shared some new ideas, but you showed me what true enjoyment really is. That's why I'm torn about my opportunity to travel now, Danny. My graduation class at UT Dallas is organizing a trip to the Mediterranean, and I signed up. It's a month-long journey, and we fly out the day after tomorrow. I know it seems wrong not to mention it sooner, but it's something I feel I must do, even though I will miss our time together. We agreed our relationship would stay casual, but that's becoming harder for me. I hope to clear my mind on this adventure and maybe find someone who is more my age during the trip." I won't lie. I felt sad, but I kept my words simple. "No matter what we decided, I feel a special connection with you. I'll miss you and wish you the best on your trip. I hope it's everything you want and that you find someone nice. Maybe you can share new things with me when you come back. We'll see if I come back, Danny, but I'm grateful for your kindness and the time we shared. A part of you will always stay with me. But now I need to get ready and figure out what to pack. Choosing clothes for a month while following the luggage rules is trickier than I expected. I always heard that when traveling to places like France or Italy, a woman should only half fill her suitcase so she has space for new things. Have you thought of that?" "No, but that sounds like a clever idea." "Thank you again." She said she was going to get dressed and leave, but she didn't resist much when I pulled her back onto the blanket for a tender moment again. We had already enjoyed a nice moment together, but this farewell was special, thanks to her caring nature. I would miss her. The next morning was hot and dusty on the tractor as I worked to prepare the fields. The agricultural agent had tested the soil, and it wasn't surprising that different areas needed different kinds of fertilizer to be healthy. Armed with that information, I drove to the feed store to talk to the manager about how to apply the fertilizer on the fields for the crops I wanted. He suggested applying some now and again after the crops began to grow. That made sense, so I agreed and paid for it. I wanted to work at the ranch but was also thirsty, so I decided to stop by Kayla's place for a drink. We chatted and laughed while she cleaned tables and got ready for the evening crowd. I offered to help, but she declined and instead invited me to spend some time together on her days off. I really appreciated how you helped those girls, and I enjoy your sense of humor, she said with a smile. I'm closed on Sunday and Monday. Want to see if we get along well? Neither of us is looking for anything serious, and I hear Gwen is away, so we both might have some time. After I suggested a fun evening in Fredericksburg with food and dancing, we set a date for Monday at 5 o'clock. We flirted more after that until the crowd came in and needed her attention. I offered to help again, and she said she would take me up on it if there were a table of women needing service, but she didn't want me flirting with the men. So I decided to leave. It was Thursday, another work day before the weekend. Since I had some free time, I thought I would work around the house and barn. I made a simple dinner of Dr. Pepper and a sandwich with chips. Chase ate quickly and went to see if dinner with Kayla was better. He must have thought it was, as he didn't return until later that night. I was dozing off while watching a cooking show when the phone rang. I shook myself awake to answer. Hi, Danny. This is Amy from College Station. Remember me? Of course I do, Miss Hardbody. What have you been up to since school? She laughed genuinely, saying, I went home to visit family for a week, then went to Yellowstone with friends, and spent last week at the beach with my girl gang. Don't you wish you were there? Yes, I do. That sounds amazing. By the way, I heard you bought a piece of land by the Llano River with a swimming hole. Could I come over this weekend to swim? Sure, but I might have a few rules about swimwear. Keep it simple. Do you have a suit? I'm not sure, but I could make something small if needed, she replied playfully. Tomorrow would be great. I'm glad my date with Kayla isn't until Monday evening. I helped Bill and Carrie for a while longer, then finished preparing the last area for cultivation. I was driving the tractor back to the barn when I saw Charlie pull up to the house with two people getting out. I kicked up a cloud of dust as I parked and got off. I thought his passenger was Kay, but it turned out Amy had arrived early. She probably wanted to enjoy the sun this afternoon and maybe spend some time with me later. I hoped. She got a friendly welcome from Bill and Carrie, who were covered in sawdust just like me, but she didn't want to hug anyone. Not in my white cover-up. You all need to grab your swimsuits because Charlie and I are ready to swim in Danny's pool. It's noon, so it is afternoon, I pointed out. Still, we haven't eaten yet. Kay packed a picnic lunch, but you have to take the cooler and sodas down. She'll be here soon, Charlie said. I leaned over to Amy and whispered, You reminded her about the swimsuit rule, right? Amy grinned back and said, Neither of us will follow your rule today. Maybe tomorrow I'll wear something more revealing, but Kay's rules are what matter today. Bill, Carrie, and I kept our swimsuits in the house since we swam most days. To everyone's surprise, Kay came close to following the swimsuit rule. Carrie always did, but Amy fell short. Okay, I'll let Kay wear her bikini, even if it has a bit more fabric than the rule allows, but she's close and brought the food. You, on the other hand, aren't following the rule at all, Amy, Carrie giggled. Brooklyn left one of her one-size-fits-all bikinis here. She asked Amy to come with her, and we all laughed as they disappeared. If Brooklyn wore it, it's going to be way too big for Amy. Looks like you're going to have to make an exception for your guest, Danny, Kay teased. Charlie was quiet, too focused on his wife, and Bill was also staring, so I joined in, making Kay warn that she would put on her cover-up if we kept acting so eagerly. I started talking to Bill about how much we had accomplished inside since Kay last visited. After our swim, we decided she needed a tour of the house and barn. We hurried inside to change into our swim shorts that Carrie and Brooklyn had gotten for us to wear under the bikini rule. They were shorts, but short enough to be a bit revealing. Hey, we'll drive the coolers down in the mule. You all use the other ATVs so we can all park at the bank, I heard Kay tell Charlie, surprised that we could drive down there. Bill started the mule, and we drove down with two coolers, one filled with soda and the other with beer. When we arrived and saw Amy, we were surprised. There was no way Brooklyn had worn that suit around us before. Carrie noticed us staring, laughed, and said they each had swimsuits for when we weren't around, but usually they ended up swimming without them, especially if Gwen was visiting. That's something to ponder while enjoying Kay, Amy, and Carrie's lovely appearances. I used to be accustomed to Carrie's look, but seeing her with new friends made her even more appealing. We carefully walked across the slippery limestone, which we had started calling slimestone, and swam into the pool. We floated and chatted for a while before sitting on the edge and talking more. Amy shared about her summer and what her friends were up to, while we filled her in on ranch activities and Brooklyn's exciting adventures. Amy didn't know the girl very well, but she was happy that she had escaped a tough situation and found a new place at college. She wanted to become a teacher. Carrie showed Amy a photo of the four of us, and Kay quickly cleared up any misunderstandings people might have had. We all laughed and joked until hunger set in, so we decided to eat. I grabbed 3 beach towels and wrapped one around each woman. They used the towels to dry off, and I suggested they cover up so we wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. They giggled at that, and Carrie took my advice while the others found some extra clothing. We enjoyed a tasty lunch of warm fried chicken, potato salad, mixed greens, and homemade fried apple pies that were way better than anything from fast food. We stuck to soft drinks, worried that having beer this early might lead to trouble for some of us. After we ate, we strolled down the shaded bank to a deeper spot with a rope swing. The crew had fixed it up, but both Bill and I were nervous about it. Carrie and Brooklyn didn't want to try it at all. However, Kay, Carrie, and Charlie were excited. Kay went first, shouting as she jumped right into the water. Charlie did a nice flip, and then Amy impressed us all with a great entry. The girls from San Antonio and Llano River were braver than us country folks who rarely left home. After a few more jumps, I gave it a go, and while I made a big splash, I was glad to be safe. Carrie was still unsure, so Big Bill took a turn and landed similarly to me. That motivated Carrie to try, and she looked lovely even when she hit the water. Soon, there was a line at the ladder with lots of laughter as everyone tried new things, and Charlie, Amy, and Kay showed off their skills. It was one of the best, most fun afternoons I could remember. I felt happy and proud that I had helped make the swing and clear the pool. Bill and Carrie weren't a couple, but seemed to enjoy each other's company as the 6 of us drove to Fredericksburg for a crawfish and shrimp feast at the Crawfish Festival. We picked a vendor from Louisiana with a strong accent, and he did not disappoint. Even the bread pudding was delicious, sweet, and rich. Like many festivals in Fredericksburg, the event was held downtown, with shops selling gifts, clothes, crafts, and artwork. Kay came back from a dress shop with bags for me to carry and caught my eye as I admired some beautiful oil paintings of the Llano River at different times of day. She mentioned that the artist lived nearby and thought they would look great in our living room. Carrie agreed, so I decided to buy them. They were large, and the seller carefully wrapped them for me. Carrie and I then carried the paintings and Kay's bags to the SUV and returned to shop some more. I thought I was done, so I settled down with a drink and chatted with some locals when Bill and Charlie called me over. They introduced me to a blacksmith who had impressive items like tables made from horseshoes and unique gate designs he created in his workshop. Bill and Charlie mentioned that I needed a gate to go with the old wrought iron fence at my home and a gate for the entrance to the ranch. I confirmed that and took a business card, saying I would call next week. When I looked at the card, I saw an address in Chance. I asked about it, and he told me he had recently moved to Chance from a job in Odessa where he worked on oil field equipment. He was now using one bay of the old Ford dealership building, while the rest were taken by a ranch and oil field services company. He had become friends with the owner, and he and his wife decided to move here for the great schools and quality of life. Hearing those reasons made me feel even better about my own decision. After loading more bags into the SUV, we drove over to Hondo's and sat down in the outdoor area, close to a 3-piece band playing country music. After our server took our drink order, I looked at Amy and asked, "Do you want to dance?" She smiled and stood up, and we danced a bit on the small concrete floor. Our friends joined us, and when the music stopped, we clapped for the band. They seemed to be happy about it and encouraged us to make requests. The 3 ladies went over and chatted with them for a few minutes. Our beers arrived just as they returned, and we enjoyed the cold drinks. The band played a classic song, El Paso, followed by the Tennessee Waltz. We danced again, and during one song, the girls switched partners. I danced with Kay while Bill danced with little Amy, and Charlie was with Carrie, who knew how to dance really well. Another swing song started, and the girls changed partners again, with Carrie in my arms. "I wish Brooklyn were here," she said. "She loves swing music, and you should see her dance." I could imagine it. She was so graceful, and I felt a bit sad. Brooklyn was where she needed to be, but I missed her, and I could tell Carrie did too. When the song ended, the band announced a break. I gently led Carrie back to our table. She hesitated for a moment, looked up at me, and asked, "Did you read her letter? She hasn't heard from you?" I did, but I don't think it needs a reply. I care for her, but the age difference and her need to grow in different ways are big problems. I'll call her someday, and maybe we can talk sometimes, but that's really all I can do right now. Please tell her that, and let me know if she wants me to reach out. We returned to the table where the others were enjoying their drinks and chatting, and we joined them just as our server came back. We ordered another round and chose our food after she served our beers. The band returned, and we danced some more. I had my last beer since I was driving. The others kept drinking, dancing, and having fun. We left as the sun was setting, and Charlie showed me a shortcut back to the ranch a few miles before we reached the river bridge. There was enough light to see that it was a lovely route, with charming old houses, a low-water bridge, and an old schoolhouse now serving as a community center. This way saved 20 miles compared to the longer route. I dropped Carrie off with Kay and Charlie, and she called her mom to let her know she was spending the night there. Amy and I had not spent much time alone, but we got to know each other better through our conversations. I worried it would be awkward after Bill went to his trailer and we entered my RV, but she made it easy. As soon as the door closed, she turned, hugged me, and leaned in for a kiss. She was a great kisser. "Shower, then bedtime," she said with excitement. In the shower, she showed off her flexibility and energy. In bed, she amazed me with her stamina and creativity. It was a wonderful night, and we still had today, tonight, and part of tomorrow to enjoy each other. There was no romance in our activities, but they were full of energy and joy, filled with laughter and little instructions. After grilling burgers outside, we drove to the ranch. I caught her up on the work we had done, and we reached the old homestead for a tour of the barn, house, and grounds. Our picnic basket contained wrapped burgers and chips, but our main aim was to relax and enjoy the sun, taking breaks to cool off in the water. If it hadn't been for Gwen's lessons, I wouldn't have been able to keep up. Amy was full of energy, and I was lucky she took time to rest, which gave me a chance to recover. On Sunday, we went to church with the Horsters, Carrie, and Bill, which probably raised some eyebrows afterward. Many women came up to meet Amy, including some I didn't know, and I noticed the surprised looks Bill and Carrie received. But Amy and Carrie handled it well, with a little help from Kay. For me, it didn't matter much. Bill and I had one final meeting on Wednesday, and then our cases would go before the judge on Friday. We would become single men that day. I knew Amy wouldn't be the last single woman I spent time with in town, so people could get used to it. To be continued.